Tonight, if I had a nickel for every time that Jimmy Palmiotti wrote a skinny dipping scene this week, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. If you woke up as Batman one day, what exactly would you do first? Well, probably the same thing that the real Batman does this week. And can you write an entire issue based off of nothing but twists? The Batman Eternal team is definitely going to find out. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 156 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and I usually save this for the end of these episodes, but I'll say it up front because I know a lot of people don't listen to the end of the episodes, and that is, we did it! We did it! Hooray, huzzah! We finally did it. We have officially, as of this episode, hit 3 years. This is the 3rd year anniversary, because if you take 156 divided by 52, what do you get? 3. Basic math for you there. But yeah, no, this is it. I'm so stoked that we actually hit 3 years. I don't think I've stuck with anything to the point where I have managed to come out with weekly episodes, not only never missing an episode, but also always getting them out on time. That's the part that surprises me the most. And don't get me wrong, I have cut it damn close sometimes. There are times where it is uploading like 45 minutes before it goes live. So yeah, there have been close calls, but I have still managed to get it out each and every time, and I am super happy about that. So anyway, for those of you who don't know how this goes, I will just say it up front here so I can also say it again at the end. But at the anniversary mark, you know, it's a big thing. And then within the next few episodes, I'm going to make some visual changes. I'm going to change the shirt I wear from Flash over to something new. See that at the end of the episode. And then the next 4 episodes are going to be devoted to whatever DC's new yearly event thing is. This time, it's Future's End. I know. Listen to me. I know. It sounds skippable. Please don't. Please do not skip it. I am begging you. I would hate to be like, ringing in the 4th year. What's that? I have 0 views. Please at least watch those episodes. I promise you I'll do something interesting with them. But yeah, no. I mean, I could go through all the song and dance that I usually go through on these anniversaries. Thank you so much for listening, whether it's for 1 episode or 150. I'm super stoked that you've been here along the way. I love to say that I do this for you, but I don't. I do it for me. And that's another thing I need to share. I have overcommitted. What do I mean by that? Well, for those of you who know me, I collected the New 52 in trade paperbacks. I started around 2015 when I moved in pretty damn close to a comic shop, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the New 52. I'm going to get everything in trades. I made that commitment, and I did that for about a year. And then when Rebirth started, I switched over and I did single issues. So as they were coming out weekly, I picked up every single issue that Rebirth has ever put out and post that as well. So last weekend, I made the decision that I wanted to backdate the New 52 into single issues as well. And I went to a local Comic-Con and I bought 500 New 52 comics out of like the 3,000 I'm going to need. So yeah, welcome to a new era of my life where I decided I'm just going off the deep end entirely. Enjoy watching my mental breakdown in real time. Anyway, this is already going to be a long episode. I don't care. It's an anniversary. I'm fine with that. I will, however, let you get on with it. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you continue to do so and listen in to the end to hear my graciousness once more. But anyway, comics for this week. Let's jump into that. It is a bunch of endings. So we've got, in no particular order here, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Batman, Superman, Red Lanterns, Sinestro, Aquaman, The Flash, Secret Origins, All-Star Western, Star-Spangled War Stories featuring G.I. Zombie, Justice League Dark, and then our 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. For those of you who don't know what I mean by a bunch of endings, Catwoman is the end of Ann Nocenti's run, which, thank God. All-Star Western is ending in general. I believe that there was one other one that was getting a thing. Justice League Dark's the end of an arc. There's a bunch of them that are ending arcs as well. It's a whole different thing. But the big thing is Batman Eternal and Future's End. If you've been keeping up with those, or even if you haven't, there are major shifts in this week's issues. So be sure to listen to those. Super important. Beyond that, yeah, it's time to begin the 156th episode. Please enjoy the final episode of what I consider to be season 3. And yeah, that's about it. Let's start with Catwoman. Catwoman number 34, written by Ann Nocenti, art by Patrick Olliffe. So last issue wrapped up the whole race of thieves thing that I don't even know what happened. Apparently Catwoman won, I guess. So this issue picks up in Gotham, and we see a weird mechanical looking beast thing is getting up on top of a building. It breaks into a room that is almost certainly Catwoman's because it has a bunch of cats in it, and it just starts like scanning around and making clicking noises. And the narration basically is just Catwoman saying like, well, after that whole race of thieves things, I've got some time to go out and do things. I'm going to spend some money on Alice Tesla, my engineer friend who gives me all these wonderful gadgets because I've got so much money to share around with her. So Catwoman arrives at Alice Tesla's place, and she's wearing like a VR headset playing some sort of video game. Catwoman tries to get her attention, eventually has to rip the headset off of her, and she's like, what the hell? I was in the middle of a game. So Catwoman says, hey, let's go, I'm going to buy you a new dress. And she's like, no thanks, I can literally sew my own stuff, and I don't like going outside. And Catwoman's like, can you spell agoraphobic? And she's like, oh, I don't know, can you spell action junkie? Like, I just prefer to be by myself, and I don't like going outside. Is that such a big thing? And then Alice says, all right, look, you want me to get outside so much, fine. I've been thinking ever since the race of thieves, we have a lot more money, or you have a lot more money, therefore you have a bigger target on your head. I think we could use a new safe house. And Catwoman's like, I've got like 17 of them, but yeah, sure, go ahead, make your point. And she points out that there is this old rundown museum that used to be a murder museum, and it's completely derelict, and they can use that to hide out in. Catwoman's like, awesome, great, let's go check it out. So Alice gets dressed up, and she's got like all these bags and knapsacks and stuff. Apparently she's bringing along some technology called data rakes and data eaters. They don't explain it. I won't either. And as she's about to step outside, Catwoman's like, what's wrong now? And she's like, it's raining and there's bugs and nature is gross and I hate it. And Catwoman just drags her out into the rain hand first. So they make their way to the murder museum. Catwoman breaks her way in, and as they look inside, they're like, oh, it was a wax museum. There's a bunch of like half-melted wax figurines and rusty weapons here. And as they step inside, all the windows slam shut with bars on them, and it has become a trap. So Catwoman goes around trying to knock down every door she can, and Alice is like, hey, could you like chill? I'm trying to think about what to do next. So Alice explains when she was being interrupted, she was playing a video game. I don't even know, like, she didn't say what it was. It's some sort of RPG, like sword and fantasy game, and she was questing to get some better armor, and she was beset by a mob that is unbeatable by her own level standards. But then this dude showed up named Siberius, a level 65 tech caster, whatever, and they made a little buddy team up. They started working together, but it turns out that Siberius was able to hack into her system and get a bunch of her data files, and it turns out that this place isn't actually a safe house. It's where she tracked Siberius's like IRL computer to in order to get her data back. And Catwoman's like, why didn't you just tell me? I'm all for doing that sort of thing. And she's like, well, you're very intimidating. So she looks at the wax figures, and one of them is of her in-game avatar. And she's like, wait a minute, that's not right. Also, I got my battle armor. Why isn't that on here? And as she goes to touch it, all of a sudden a big glass panel splits between Catwoman and Alice. She's now cut off from her. Catwoman tries throwing her little catarang through it, and it just bounces off, so there's nothing she can do. And then stepping out of the shadows is an absolute utter dweeb dressed up as Siberius, and he's like, oh, welcome, Tesla. And she's like, oh, you look like that. I expected... And he's like, don't say it, because I expected more from you too. So we're equally to blame here. So he basically says, all right, here's the thing. I'm not here to kill you, whatever. I'm here as a test. I have a 3D printer and some computers, and we are going to do battle bots. You are going to fabricate and load up your code for your thing, and we are going to fight them against each other, and whoever wins. He literally just says, and I give you what you want. I guess that being the data. So, and I'm not even sure that he says what he wants in return. So she's like, ooh, I really can't resist. And Catwoman's like, this is clearly a trap. Do not do this. Why are you playing his game? And she's like, oh, I'm a better coder than him. It's not going to be a problem. So she starts coding up this weird angel-looking thing, whereas he codes up the exact same little robot monster thing that we saw at the beginning of the issue. And they start fabricating out the pieces. And it seems to only take 5 minutes tops to do all this, because Catwoman's still just sitting there yelling, saying oh, it's not a game. It's for real. Stop it. So they start getting into a fight. And she's able to take to the air, and somehow she hacks into the fuel lines of this place to have flamethrowers. And all the while, Catwoman is just looking around this murder museum, just okay, I'm just gonna start breaking stuff. So she grabs a mace and just walks into a room with a bunch of servers and stuff in it, and she just starts throwing the mace down on everything. She's like, well, hopefully that's doing something. I don't know. But as she manages to use the mace to break her way out of the window she came in, she's like, all right, now I need to get in there and save Alice. So we see that they're in the middle of the fight, and it seems like Alice is doing perfectly fine. But Catwoman comes in, uses one of her gadgets to electrify the bot that Siberius made, and then grabs Siberius and knocks him out. And Alice is like, oh my god, are you okay? And he's like, why would you care? She's like, I don't. I just don't want a dead body. And he's like, well, of course I care. And so Catwoman knocks him out, and they go home. And it seems like there's a weird romantic tension there, but then immediately as they're swinging their way back home, they see that above Alice's workshop is a intruder alert, a signal in the sky. And she's like, wait a minute, that's the same battle bot that Siberius had. He was just trying to keep us occupied while he came here to get more files on me. Screw this guy, I hate him. So she explains, yeah, during our coding session, I knew you were out breaking stuff outside, so that would take care of certain servers, but I had to be sure about wiping it all, so I took one of those extra data rakers or whatever, and I put it into a system, and it erased everything and stole part of his data as well. So all's good. Also, there was a robot at your house. Sorry about that, but that's gone too. And Catwoman's like, maybe it's for the best you don't get out so much. Ha. And then we see Siberius has used Alice's design to make an army of his robots and her robots, and then he says, until next time, girls. This is the final Nocenti issue. That said, I think maybe the Future's End one is as well, but frankly, I don't care, because this is the last one in plot, and I am so happy. For a one-shot issue, it's not that bad. It's okay. It's mercifully brief, and it doesn't involve any of this weird just making up new things and jumping around different plot lines that always pisses me off with Nocenti stories. So I'm okay with it, but still, it's not a great story altogether, and it reeks of someone who has no idea how the tech stuff works and is just kind of complaining of Catwoman's yelling you gotta unplug from the game. It's we know we're people who play games know they're playing games. I hope you understand this. This is not something where she's confusing reality. You die in the game, you die for real, Catwoman. No. Shut up. shut up. So yeah, no, it's not a horrible issue, but it reeks of that sort of boomerism. Overall, I'm going to give this one a, I don't know, it's a 6. It's only because it's not offensive for this book. Like, if I was objectively doing it across all of New 52, it probably would be beneath a 5. But honestly, I'm just surprised that I could stand a Catwoman issue for as long as I did. So I'll give it a 6. And that wraps up Catwoman under Nocenti. We get more under, I believe it's Valentina or something like that. I don't know. We'll see what happens when we get there. Harley Quinn number 10, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Marco Falla. Last issue, we had Harley finding out or going to this underground fight club, but it's skate club and it's just roller derby with no rules. This issue opens up with, I swear to God, we've never met this character before. One of the people living in the building named Mario is moving out to live with like his girlfriend or whatever, and Tony is saying goodbye. And there's just a full page of him like packing up and him saying like, oh, don't worry, I'll still be working with you. I'm just living somewhere else. And he leaves and that's it. So then we cut back to the skate club thing. We see Harley's normal roller derby team also is at skate club. They also do this. And they're in the locker room. Cy Boardman is placing a bet for Harley to win. And it's apparently like $4,000 or something like that. So the girls start getting ready. They don't want to get changed in front of Cy, and Harley's like, don't worry about it. He's old. He can't see anything in front of his face. Right, Cy? And Cy's just like, where am I? Who are you? So they go back out, and we do get the clarification that Skate Club, anything goes. There are absolutely no rules. And Harley's like, that's fantastic. I love it. Let's do it. So we get our first race, which is one of Harley's people, Sky Scrapper, going up against Connie Canal. And Connie Canal is definitely just a dude, like 100%. And Harley clarifies this, and she's the friend, I forget her name, I'm sure they said it earlier on, but basically says like, yeah, we don't discriminate. Like, if they claim they are, then we just go with it. Like, it's totally cool. And she's like, all right, cool. So they immediately take off. Immediately the Connie just whaps around and smacks Sky in the face. She goes down hard. Connie gets over to the basket full of weapons, which include things like a mace, a bat with spikes on it, and a battle axe. And so Sky manages to dodge around Connie. He takes a few swings at her, and then she grabs hold of his chest hair and uses that to throw him out of the ring, crotch first, into a solid steel beam. And we see that he is immediately out of the fight. So she gets the win. Next up is Harley. And apparently the opponent she's going up against is undefeated, a 100% destroy record. Harley gets introduced as her new name, Harley Hack-em-up, which the guy's like, look, if you want to change your name, I don't care. Whatever. So be it. So this other lady gets introduced. Her name is Maria Monsterella. She's like 8 feet tall, and she's just throwing people aside, just like, where's my opponent? I don't see her. And Harley's just like, I'm down here beneath your giant chest. So Sai's like, oh, Jesus, how did she get... why is this newbie being paired up with, like, literally this monster of a human being? And it's like, well, the matchups are random. So Sai tries getting his money back on the bet, but the lady who took the bet is like, no. But good news is, it's a 30-1 odds now, so if she wins, you'll be rich. So immediately, Maria just picks up Harley by the head, kicks her out of the ring, and just sends her flying. And we get the little, like, stars and galaxies around Harley's head. She's like, oh, I could see a whole galaxy long, long ago and far, far away. Then we just cut to a galaxy long, long ago and far, far away. And it turns out it isn't actually long ago. It's actually right now. And there is a thing of like some aliens where they were responsible for a planet called Kroll, and now there's somebody who is a female that is destroying their planet, just building by building, going nuts. So these aliens unleash a giant behemoth monster called the Fist, who just has a giant ass right fist, and just like, oh, hurry, the Fist is our only chance. Even if he is monstrous and would kill us in an instant, we have to use him. So they let out the Fist. As the superhero comes up, to attack the Fist. Fist just rolls back a punch, sends the hero flying straight out of the atmosphere. And just like, aha, well, we've saved our planet for now. Except the Fist is now loosed, and it hates that we tied it up for so long. And so they get crushed under Fist's fist. And then we see the super being, whoever it was, flying through space, and the little editor's box says, check out issue 11 to see what's going on here. Now back to our regularly scheduled beating. So Harley is still continuing to get beat up. She's being thrown into Cyborgman. Cy wakes her up by dumping water on her face, and she's like, hey, you got any, like, gadgets or weapons or something I can use to take her down? And he's like, well, I have this tube of exploding toothpaste. It works by having the person brush their teeth with it, and therefore they'll explode. And she's like, perfect, I'll make it work. So as Maria is being crowned the victor, immediately Harley comes in just like, I'm not out yet. So she takes a baseball bat to Maria's knees. It does nothing. And she's like, well, take a look at my secret weapon. And she takes out the toothpaste and starts rubbing it onto Maria's stomach. And she's like rubbing it in circles, and Sai's like, no, not like that, you idiot. Back and forth motion. You got to do back and forth. So then she rubs back and forth on Maria's stomach. Maria's like, okay, I'm actually going to kill you now. And then she just explodes. Her midsection just explodes outwards. It covers the entire crowd in guts. And everyone is just disgusted by this. So Harley's like, yeah, I did it. I won. But then the judge comes up and is just like, no, you didn't. I already finished declaring the round. She was the one who won. You're disqualified. Get out of here. And Harley's like, what do you... I thought there were no rules. I thought that was the whole point. So they go out to a diner, grab something to eat. Apparently one of the friends bet against Harley, so she made a little bit of money off of it regardless. And as they're leaving, Sai's getting loaded up into a rental cab or something that can take him back home. And there's this extremely handsome man named Mason who's hitting on Harley. And she's like, hold on, I just need to go say bye to Sai. So she goes up, says bye, and tells the driver, if anything happens to this guy, I'll kill you. And the driver's like, whatever, man. So she goes back to talk to Mason. Mason's already taken off, and her friends say, oh, there was a cop car that drove by, and he just split. So clearly he's got some bad stuff going on. And Harley's like, that's perfect for me, though. So they decide to go get a late night dip just to cheer themselves up. They go down to the beach, strip down to their underwear. And everyone's just a little bit like hesitant, like, oh, I don't know, should we be doing this? And then Harley just strips off her underwear, runs into the ocean, causing everyone else to go in skinny dipping afterwards. This is like, every issue, this finds a new way to outdo itself on sexualizing the characters. As they are swimming out in the ocean, Harley disappears. They're like, oh, where's Harley at? All of a sudden, one of them yelps out, apparently Harley bit her on the ass, and then she dunks Harley back under. Harley goes around biting all the other girls on the ass, and everyone's laughing and playing and blah, blah, blah. So they get back up on the beach to get redressed. Sun's coming up. And Harley, or at least it looks like sun's coming up. It might actually still be middle of the night now that I think about it. Harley is like, all right, you guys go on. I'm just going to relax here for a while. And she lays back on a bench, looks up at the sky and says, ooh, a shooting star. I better make a wish. And she wishes she could get an astronaut license. But the star is not a star. It's that superhero from before. And it crashes down into Harley on the boardwalk. And we see that it is Power Girl. We have a Harley Power Girl arc upcoming here. And I know that because I have looked ahead. So, yeah, that's happening. Okay, sure. Also, Harley didn't get, like, completely disenfranchised from the skate club. She'll be back in a future issue. Anyway, it's a fine issue. It's okay. There are some humorous moments here, but, like, I know with every passing issue that this book is written specifically for 13-year-old boys. Like, the whole, oh, like, Harley just strips down off panel and, like, ooh, use your imagination, kids. It's like, yeah, clearly that's where we're going for with this. And the humor is there to match. So, is it a bad issue? No. Is it aimed for me? Definitely not. It's fine for what it is. I can't fault it, but it's just not for me. Overall, I think... I don't know. I think I'm going to give this one like a 6. It's okay. I don't know. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for there to be actually like some sort of story arc that I care about, but I don't think it's ever going to come. Batman Superman number 13, written by Greg Pak, art by Jay Lee. So last issue, Kaio, the chaos demon thing from Apocalypse, sent Batman and Superman to Earth 2 to see if they could mess with the timeline. They didn't. Then they saved like what they could. And then Kaio just mind whammied them at the end. And I didn't think that it was like a big thing. I thought they were just going to be put back in their own stuff. But no. So we open up with Lord Satanus, who sees Kaio just dipping around the dark realm of like Earth or whatever. And he's like, yo, this is my realm. What? I will eat you. What are you doing here? And Kaio's like, oh, hey, I'm Kaio. I'm not very appetizing. Don't eat me. But I do offer up some pretty cool superheroes that have been meddling in my business and they have no memories. So you want to have some fun with them? And Satanus is like, So we open up in Gotham and Superman just appears and he's naked and he has no idea who he is or what's going on. He's just like, all right, that's weird. But I hear like all of this stuff going on. I hear all these things around me. And I also feel like nothing here can hurt me, but I don't know why. And then a dark figure up above says like, oh, did it hurt? And he's like, what? And he's like, when you fell out of heaven. And he's like, what? So at that point we see it's Catwoman and he can hear her heartbeat and he's like, is that normal? Should I be able to do that? And all of a sudden a giant ass robot shows up and it says kill the cat and it goes after Catwoman and she's just like, oh, gotta go. So then down in Crime Alley, Batman shows up. He is wearing his full suit and he's like, I feel tense and like I'm ready for anything, but I don't know who I am. And he looks in a reflection. He's like, I'm a man dressed as a bat. That's weird, right? I feel like that should be weird. Why am I dressed like a bat? And then all of a sudden Scarecrow comes out of nowhere with a gun, starts aiming at Batman, and he just immediately dodges. He's like, whoa, reflexes. All right, well, I guess I'll just trust those for now. So he manages to kick Scarecrow, and he's like, all right, no, I'm here, I'm up. And he's like, oh, well, you're not as out of it as you seemed, are you, Batman? And he's like, Batman, all right, guess that's my name. Yeah, no, I'm not out of it, what's up? And so Scarecrow fires some fear toxin at him, and Batman starts like, geez, what is this? What's going on? Scarecrow's like, haha, my fear toxin will let you see your greatest terrors. There's nothing you can do now, Batman. And Batman just kicks him off a roof again. And Scarecrow's like, wait a minute, hold on, what? And Batman's like, well, he doesn't say this, but he's like, well, I guess the upside to having no memories is I also have no fears. So that's cool. So as he comes down, he picks up Scarecrow's gun. And Scarecrow's like, hold up, bro. I've been fighting you for a while now. You do not use guns. And Batman just pulls the trigger, just and he's like shoots at Scarecrow's feet, sending him running. And he's like, well, that was fun. That was a great time. I enjoyed that. So back over to Superman. He had decided to consciously go and help Catwoman against the giant robot thing. He leaps up and manages to grab hold of her as she, is being attacked. And Catwoman's just like, oh, all right, you're not just another pretty face, are you? And we see him just tear apart the robot's head. And he's just like, wow, all right, that was fun. I enjoyed that. And Catwoman, as he's like, are you all right, ma'am? And she's like, ma'am, okay, you know me. Do you not know me? And he's like, nope. And she's like, do you know yourself? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh, all right, well, you put yourself in danger there to help me. And he's like, I don't think it was a danger. Was it a danger? And she's like, well, apparently not, but you didn't know at the time. So here's the thing. That robot was made by a name named Mangubot, and he got out of jail, and now he's going to try to kill me. And I need your help, so please, I think you're capable of amazing things. And it's so obvious she knows exactly who he is, but regardless, he's like, I can hear her heartbeat. It's steady. I think that means she's telling the truth. So he grabs hold of her, and they just start flying across the city. Batman gets to a mirror, and he takes off his cowl, and he's like, all right, I'm pretty hot. I'm okay with that, but I have no idea what's going on here. And he sees the scars on his body. He's like, also don't know what happened there, but maybe that's for the better. So he's like, all right, I've got explosives and toxins and painkillers. Either I'm a criminal or I don't have another option. I think I'm just a criminal. But he presses a button on one of his gadgets, and all of a sudden the Batmobile comes peeling out and reaches out to him. And he's like, oh, this is freaking sweet. So he hops in, and he's like, home. And immediately the Batmobile takes off, heads back to the Batcave, and he's like, oh my god, this is... So there's like holographic stuff, secret tunnels, jeez, this is awesome. And then over the intercom is Alfred's voice like, oh, welcome home, Master Bruce. I've taken the liberty of laying out a change of clothes. And we see a tuxedo just propped up there ready, and Batman just plays along. He's like, yeah, great to be here. Thanks, you... So he goes up, and apparently there's a whole gala going on up in Wayne Manor, as there always is. And as he steps in, one of the people's like, Bruce Wayne. And he's like, yes, Bruce Wayne. And she's like, how does it feel to be the sexiest, richest man in Gotham? And he's like, feels pretty freaking great. And everyone laughs, except for Alfred, who's like, okay. So... we cut over to Lois Lane, who is on a train, and it turns out she is on the phone with Mongubot, who wants to hold an interview to prove his innocence. But, you know, he's on the run from the law or all that because he broke out of jail. And Lois is like, well, you got to give me something, man. You can't just say you're innocent. Tell me where you are so we can do this. And he's like, I've got a better idea. And we see that one of his robots comes up, sneaks up on Lois, and she's like, haha, I thought you might try something, so I've got this. And she pulls out this little, like, super taser thing that she stole from her dad's military supplies. And as she's doing this, Mongubot uses his robots to, like, take possession of the train. And so Lois is tumbling around. She eventually gets caught by Mongubot, and he's like, hey, look, Lois, I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to save my own life. See, Superman's after me, and he will kill me. But if I have you, I'm cool. That he's not going to do anything to me as long as I'm here with you. So then on cue, Superman just blasts through the train, just like cuts it in half with heat vision and super strength and whatnot. And he ends up just zapping the Mongubot, who has Lois's head, just with heat vision, no problem. And so Lois is plummeting down out of the train because it was lifted up in the air. And she's like, Superman, stop, it's me, Lois. And he reaches down, grabs her, just being like, Lois, all right, Lois, what in the hell is a Superman? And Catwoman rides up and just goes, ha, funny. So, I like it. I can't even pretend I don't. It's such a funny little thing of just having Batman and Superman just having all their gadgets, all their powers, but no memory of it, and then just doing their super heroics and just being like, this is freaking awesome. I'm having a great time. Like, that's anybody would be in that position. If you just woke up with superpowers, you'd be like, oh, hell yeah, I can fly. Freaking awesome. So I like it. And then Catwoman being opportunistic here, being like, I've got myself a babyface Superman who will do anything I tell him to do. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun. I don't know. It was just fun the whole way through. My only critique, as always, is Jay Lee art is just a little bit hard to figure out what in the hell is going on. Very stylistic, but once you get a grip on it, and for a lot of the panels, it's fine. There's just a few things, especially with Mongubot, that I was really confused by. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give this one... I think I'm going to give this one an 8, honestly. I think this might be the best that this series has gotten so far, and I hope that it continues in this level of fun of just like, screw that, I'm a man dressed like a bat, and I'm having the time of my life. I'm the richest, sexiest man in Gotham. Frickin' sweet. I love it. So yeah, 8 for this. Superman number 34, written by Geoff Johns, art by John Romita Jr. So last issue, a bit more bonding between Superman and Ulysses, and then Superman said, hey, by the way, I found your parents, here we go. So we open up with Mr. Oz, who is still not named as Mr. Oz yet, and he's saying like, oh, Superman, you went through all these horrible things in your childhood, but still you see hope. And then he looks over at this closed door and says, oh, I'm sure if I let you out, you'd offer an opinion on Superman, but we don't know what's behind the door. So we then go to Ulysses' parents' house, and the parents are basically explaining, like, yeah, we were physicists for the military. We got inducted by Dr. Margaret Knight. She said that all of our work or whatever has been used for mass killings because the military gonna military. So we worked in the private sector. Something went wrong. There was some strange matter that was eating the entire facility. We thought we were going to die. We put you in a rocket ship. And Superman's like, that sounds really familiar. And we sent you away. And all of a sudden, then we realized we could contain the strange matter, but we sent you away and all of our research was destroyed, so we had no way of getting you back. We made a horrible mistake. Can you please forgive us? And Ulysses is just looking at baby pictures all over the wall. He's like, are these me? Is that what I look like? That's crazy. I've never seen pictures of myself. And he's like, seriously, Neil, you good? And he's just like, look, I don't need to forgive you for anything. I'm just so happy that you're both still alive. And then he gives his story on what happened, where he remembers there being a blue light, a whole bunch of energy. It was his arrival into the fourth dimension. And when he got there, there's some weird ass tentacle, black skin, like snake monster looking things that are very clearly barely humanoid. And they read off the thing that says Ulysses on the ship, and that's how he gets his name. And they're like, yeah, they care for me as if I was their own child. They helped me understand what I was. Apparently, traveling to the fourth dimension gave me powers like flight and strength, and also I can control energy to an extent. And the parents ask, like, okay, but who were your adopted parents? And it's like, I don't know. They were... My parents lived for a very, very long time. They weren't so big on, like, names or whatever, but... my father was a doctor, and my mother worked for the Great World's government. And Superman's like, Great World? What's that? And he's like, that's what we called their planet. Look, the Great World was the kind of place that you were hoping for, a place without war or violence and stuff like that. It was awesome. Except every once in a while, we got a villain from the fifth dimension. And he caused problems. And his name was Cleric. He was one of those guys. I fought against Cleric a bunch every time he tried to invade. One time I killed his brother, and then that made things personal. So he pledged to find my home world and destroy it, and that's what brought him to Earth. And so immediately the parents are like, oh, so you're like, that place is Superman. Do you need to go back? Or do you need to leave again? And he's like, nah, we took care of Cleric here, which means my home world's safe. I'm good to stay. I want to stay. Let's do that. So we see Superman and Neil's mom go up to his childhood bedroom, where apparently she's been like updating it slowly up until he turned like 5, because it's got a race car bed and like a mobile with a bunch of like ships and stuff on it. And he's like, she's like, I don't know if he's gonna like sleeping here, but we can change it however he needs. I think it's gonna be a thing. But how are we gonna explain this to anyone? And Superman's like, bro, I know all about faking documents of like proving that you weren't at a certain place at a certain time. Trust me, I can fake his death for a while and how he came back. It's all good. I got a friend. And she's like, okay, but he's also going to need somebody to take care of him in the whole superhero business. Superman, I feel weird asking you this, but you cool with doing that? And he's like, oh, of course, absolutely. I would always help that. He's part of your family, no problem. And she's like, oh, well, we think that you're part of our family now too. And he's like, oh, that's sweet. Thank you so much. So out on the porch, Neil's talking to his dad, and the dad's like, hey, look, cards on the table. I did kind of give up hope there for a while, and I tried to convince your mom to as well, but like she never buckled. So I'm super stoked you're home, but like just want to let you know that. And he's like, oh, well, don't ever give up hope, Dad. Tomorrow will be better. So sometime later, Clark is asleep in his bed. He wakes up at like 3:30 in the morning, and Ulysses is just sitting there staring at him. He's like, do you need to sleep? Do Kryptonians need to sleep? I don't need to sleep, though. It's something with my energy controlling. I don't know how that works. And Clark's just like, dude, what are you doing here? And he's like, Superman, do you dream? And he's like, sometimes. And he's like, what do you dream about? Are you Clark or are you Superman in your dreams? He's like, usually Clark, sometimes both, rarely Superman. I always have this one recurring dream where like I'm back on Krypton and I hear everyone needs my help and I rip open my shirt Superman style, but my suit isn't underneath it. And then I wake up and he's just like, wow, that's weird. I never dreamed before. And like, it's because I didn't need to sleep, but my mom said that was a curse. Like my adopted mom, not my actual mom. It said like it was a curse of like, I'd never dreamed. So maybe I would have dreamed of Earth. If you've been dreaming of Krypton, maybe I would have dreamed of Earth and have come back to it sooner. And all of a sudden this little techno thing goes off in his pocket and it glows green. And Superman's like, what the hell is that? And he's just like, oh, this is, I can trail energy. It's the whole way that I found you back at your apartment is because I trailed the solar energy that was coming off of you. I managed to trail the energy for how, what's his name was, the friggin' guy they fought against, the mechanical creatures. And he's like, well, I figured out where they came from. You want to go deal with it? And he's like, yeah, let me get my suit. So they fly out to a junkyard. Superman uses heat vision to blast into the ground because Ulysses says that's an underground thing. And all of a sudden his heat vision starts going haywire. And he's like, what in the hell's happening to me, man? This is like Trinity War stuff. And he's like, oh, sorry, Ulysses. Like, that's probably me. I attract energy when it's concentrated enough. Let me just stand over here. You should be fine. So Superman and him go downstairs. Ulysses is not able to see in the dark like Superman, so he conjures a little light using Superman's heat vision energy that he captured before. And it's just like, okay, well, it looks like there's an entire assembly line down here. They're still making stuff, but what are they making? And all of a sudden, this itty-bitty yellow mechanical bug latches onto the side of Ulysses' head, and then he just immediately turns evil, blasts Superman with heat vision, and they start fighting. And Superman's like, all right, I'm sure this is the bug. I'm just going to yank it off real quick. And he yanks it off, crushes it. And Ulysses is out cold for a minute. But then the person who caused it comes up behind Superman. He's like, you're wondering if you've heard him, haven't you, Superman? Hello, I am the machinist. This is the factory. And these are my merchandise. Would you like to buy one? And he presents two, like, crazy-ass robotic wolves that start attacking Superman. And Superman's like, Jesus, why? What is this? And he's just like, why? Why did I make them, or why am I sending after you? Both for the same reason, money. I want to sell these, and if they could stand up against Superman, doesn't that make them worth more? And Superman's like, okay, well, I'm going to just crush these things, and they're not going to be that big of a deal. And he's just like, whatever, you still were surprised by them. They're going to sell for billions to the military. So at that point, he says, like, oh, and by the way, I've already sold a bunch of them. And when they go to the military, I use my secret cameras in them to see all the death that they've done. And you would not believe the death I've got going on in my head. And then he just releases a whole bunch of those yellow bugs to one of them to latch onto Superman. And Superman's zapping him like crazy, but he's unable to fight them all off. And the machinist is just like, oh, yes, with Superman under my control, I'll finally succeed in taking this to the next level. I'll be able to sell him to the highest bidder. And then Ulysses steps up and he's like, yo, man, stay out of my head. And he heat visions through Machinist's body. All the ticks just fall down. And Superman's like, dude, what did you just do? And Ulysses is like, I had to stop him. I killed him. And then from the Machinist's body is like, no, you didn't. I wasn't actually here the whole time. So they take off his mask, and it turns out it's just like a voice chip implanted on a totally innocent dude's neck. And it's just like, you just killed an innocent man. Ha ha. And that's where the issue ends. I mean, Machinist is stupid. I'm sure we're going to turn him into like something more, but like, that's the voice I was using for him is actually how I read it the whole time, because immediately he comes off as just like, you want to buy my merch? I just, screw that guy. I'm all right with the Ulysses, like, backstory and all that. You know, it's the Krypton storyline, and he was fighting for the planet and whatnot. I'm cool with it. Cool of them to bring that fifth dimension stuff, if that is a pull from Morrison's run, though I highly doubt it is. Beyond that, it's a fine enough story, and I think that this issue is just pretty much a solid 7. And I am more okay with the John Romita Jr. art in this issue. Maybe he had more time, I don't know, but like, it wasn't as bad for me. There were some dodgy ones, but it wasn't as bad. So that's what gets it the 7. Red Lanterns number 34, written by Charles Soule, art by Alessandro Vitti and Jim Calafiore. So last issue was the annual. A whole bunch of stuff happened. Zilius Zoc sacrificed himself to take out Atrocitus' new Blood Ocean and Church of Blood. And then the people of Earth who have been turned into Red Lanterns, a bunch of them at least, Guy and Bleez managed to get a few of them, whereas all the rest of them went to Atrocitus. So this issue picks up back down on Earth, where Guy and his crew, along with Supergirl, are fighting against as many of the human Red Lanterns as possible. They realize it's absolutely hopeless, and they just are trying to buy enough time. Supergirl's like, all right, cool, what are we doing? Where are we going? And he's like, you're going to stay here. You're going to buy us time. You're going to like stay on Earth. The Earth needs you, okay? We'll be fine. So Bleez and him take off. Atrocitus sees this and just like, I know where they're going. No big deal. Meanwhile, up on Stygia Prime, which is where the new Blood Temple was, the Blood Ocean, Scalix has brought along Shadow Thief, who is still a mind-garbled mess. And he's just like, oh no, the Blood Lake, it's gone. I'm sorry, my love, I can't restore you to your mental capacity. And she just goes, rah, 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 rah. So then Rancor shows up, now completely healed after the events of the last issue. And Scalix is like, yo, man, you're not insane anymore. He's like, I never was. I had a parasite in me. I took care of it, though. What's up with you? And he's like, oh, this is Shadow Thief. She's kind of crazy right now. And she goes, rah, 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 rah. So I was going to throw her into the blood lake, but that's not going to work. And Rancor's like, yeah, that was Zilius. He sacrificed himself. Total bro move. Best dude ever. So Scalix is super pissed off. And he's like, oh, geez, this sucks. I hate this. So Guy pops over the ring and is just like, Scalix, you there, man? And Scalix is like, yeah, hey, my plan to infiltrate Atrocitus' thing, I didn't have a shot at him. I'm sorry. Everything went to crap. And he's like, hey, don't worry about it. My whole plan was to infiltrate you guys, and I immediately messed that up. So we good. Anyway, we've got a problem here. Bleez and I are going to Yzmalt. That's where we're going to finish all this. Atrocitus, he's got a whole army coming with him. So you guys stay back. In case this goes south, we need someone else on the other side of the Red Lanterns, all right? Might be the last time you see me. I'm out. Bye. So Bleez and Guy make their way back to Yzmalt, and it's just like, okay, this place is nothing but open fields. We're just going to have to like make our last stand on a hill or something. She's like, actually, there's a way we could funnel them a bit more. And they go to the caves hidden underneath the old battery where the, what were their name? The inversions were like way back at the beginning of this story. And he's like, yeah, no, this is perfect. We can do something here. And she's like, all right, so what's the plan? How long can we keep up the like fight them off one by one as they come in? And he's like, well, long enough for you to get out of here. Seriously, please. I need you to keep the Red Lanterns going in spite of Atrocitus. This is my fault that all this happened. You got to understand, like, I got to go down with this ship if that's what it takes. And she's like, Guy, I've been telling you this all along. You're an idiot. So at that point, John Stewart pops up over Guy's ring. And he's like, hey, man, I'm glad I got through. Simon told me about some crazy stuff going on Earth. That seemed like event comic level. You good? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. But I need you to tell Hal something. This isn't his fault, all right? He sent me to be with the Red Lanterns, but I chose to stay with the Red Lanterns, okay? Don't let him feel guilty about a damn thing of what happens here. And John's like, I feel like you're coding this to mean, oh, you're going to die. And he's just like, quite possibly, but you tell Hal that. Bleez, meanwhile, goes over and talks to Judge, because Judge is just chilling down here and just like, hey, Judge, Atrocitus are clearly evil. Are you going to be on our side now? And she's like, I only judge. And he's like, okay, whatever, bye. So up top, Atrocitus arrives with his whole army of human Red Lanterns, and he's just like, all right, well, sick 'em. And so all the Red Lanterns start heading towards the cave, and Atrocitus is like, all right, this won't take long, and then finally I'll have my revenge. And he's interrupted by Shadow Thief, Scalix, and Rancor showing up behind them and doing a surprise attack. And he's just like, haha, you may have us outnumbered, but like we've got scores that need settling. What are you waiting for, Atrocitus? And he's just like, oh, hell no. So he pulls back all of his Red Lanterns again and starts fighting against Scalix, Rancor, and Shadow Thief. Immediately Atrocitus is like, Scalix, you stupid bastard, how many times are you going to betray people? He's like, I never betrayed Guy Gardner. I just betrayed you twice. And he's like, all right, snap. Just snap Scalix's neck. No problem. So Shadow Thief sees this, and despite her being entirely lost in her rage, she gets even more enraged. And she's like, oh, now you must die. So using her extra Shadow Thief powers, she might have stood a chance if Atrocitus were alone. But of course he's not. He uses all these new Red Lanterns to charge after Shadow Thief. Meanwhile, Rancor is going up against Dexter, because Dexter took some of his blood to get the constructions, whatever they're called, the constructs. And as Dexter's about to blast through one of Rancor's final defenses, all of a sudden Bleez shows up and knocks Dexter down to the ground, and Dexter's just like, that's no fair. And then she gets crushed by a giant mallet. So, yeah. So Bleez is like, hey, Rancor, good to see you're not crazy. He's like, hey, I was never crazy. I was always in there, and I heard all the nice things you said about me. You wanna make this happen? And she's like, later, we can talk about that after all this. And Guy comes up being like, hey, man, I thought I told you to stay back, Rancor. I thought I told you to chill out. I mean, Scalix and Zilius, they managed to chill out. They're elsewhere. Why didn't you stay with them? And Rancor's like, bro, they're both dead. They both died. No one is staying out of this. And Guy's like, son of a, all right, fine, whatever. Let's fight for them. Let's do what we can. What the hell is Shadow Thief doing up there? And Shadow Thief's just tearing apart a bunch of other Red Lanterns, just like, all right, let's just let that keep doing its thing. Me and you, all of us, we're going to fight now. And then all of a sudden, Judge comes up behind Guy and like pierces his brain and says, Guy Gardner, I have judged you not guilty. And he's like, Jesus Christ, man, why? Okay, fine. So does that mean you're on our side now? And she's like, no, not quite. But all of these other beings, I've been watching them too. They are guilty. And so am I. And so the judge reached out to all these other Red Lanterns, as well as herself, and starts pulling a big bomb attack. So Guy tells Rancor to throw up the strongest steel he can. A giant explosion goes off, and all of the Red Lanterns are just knocked unconscious, and they start falling out of the sky, except for Judge, who's definitely dead. And Rancor's like, all right, that was like a 50-50. Wasn't sure if that was going to work out. Was she even with us? And Police is like, kinda, I don't know. It's definitely a Deus Ex Machina. So they're like, all right, how do we get these humans are unconscious, but like, how do we get them back home? We need to figure out a way to deal with that. And so they look at the carrier vessel that was holding all the rings before for Atrocitus, which is also unconscious. And so they just pry its mouth open and start shoving humans inside. And we're just like, all right, well, that'll handle it. We'll get them back down to Earth. But then Guy gets jumped by Atrocitus, and he's just like, you have taken everything from me over and over again. I hate you so much. And he vomits up like the napalm blood on Guy. And Guy's just like, man, screw you. And he blasts Atrocitus off him and says, I didn't take anything from you. I have your ring because you couldn't keep it. You didn't deserve it. You want me to prove it? I'll prove it to you now. And he reaches down and takes off his own ring, and it starts hovering in the air saying seeking host, and Guy's clutching his chest because his heart just freaking stopped. And as Guy crushes down to the ground, the ring starts floating towards Atrocity. He's like, awesome, yes, gimme, gimme, gimme. And then all of a sudden, the ring turns back around to Guy and says, Guy, Gardener of Earth, you have great rage in your heart. But not only his ring, all of the rings from all of the Red Lanterns that were either knocked unconscious or killed in this fight, like 10 of them, just plant themselves on his hands, and then Guy powers back up again. He's like, told you so. So Atrocitus tries attacking him. It does nothing. Guy can literally use the rings to rip Atrocitus's new ring off of his finger, leaving Atrocitus depowered. And he's like, look, Atrocitus, you may have started all this. You are definitely an angry SOB, but I got you beat, man. And then Guy's like, all right, enough of this, let's go. But then all of the rings from inside of the carrier Red Lantern start coming off as well. The ring off of Dextar's tail comes off as well. All of them start going into Guy Gardner's like hole in his chest. And he's like, all right, a bit too much. Can't handle this. Gonna redirect it. And so he funnels it back into the Blood Ocean and the main power battery, which of course were messed up by Atrocitus, seemingly healing them. And so Guy lands back down to the ground. He does still have a red glow about him, but he's not in his Red Lantern-like outfit. So I don't know if that means he's cured or not. And Rancor and Bleach are like, what even was that? And he's just like, I don't know, some sort of magic something. I just did what felt right. That's whatever. Hey, you guys deal with the Reds for a while. All right, I just need a break from all this. And Rancor's like, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I'm still part of the Red Lanterns. Let's not mistake that. But we got to patrol the galaxy. I'm going to go take care of my home planet after everything that just happened. So we cut back to Baltimore, and we see an old guy cleaning up outside a shop. And Guy steps up. He's like, hey, man, you need some help? And he's just like, oh, yeah, freaking aliens from outer space, man, and just crazy-ass people running around. It makes you so angry sometimes how people can be so selfish like that. And Guy's just like, yeah, I used to be pretty angry too, but I'm working on it. And the old man's like, good luck with that. And we see that as Guy starts cleaning up, he has the Red Lantern ring on like a string around his neck, which again, I don't know if that counts. I don't know whether or not he is still a Red Lantern or if he was somehow magically cured. Regardless, definitely the end of an arc. Okay, so if it is magic, we didn't get confirmation that Atrocitus and Dextar are dead, and frankly, I can't believe they are dead. I have absolutely no doubt that they're still alive. So I'm curious how that's going to wrap up, how we're going to get the explanation of like, oh yes, I lost my ring, but I'm still cool. And I'm sure they'll get the rings back eventually as well. So I don't know. We're kind of left with a clean slate here. They can go any direction they want. As for this issue, definitely enjoyed it. I think it was a bit weird at the beginning. It didn't feel like it picked up directly after where the last issue left off, because a few people, humans, were on Guy's side at the end of the annual, but they just weren't even there as this issue began. So I don't know. That was just a weird little bitty, but beyond that, it's a solid one. I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think it's a super nice issue, and we'll see what happens moving forward. Honest to God, it might not even be Charles Soule anymore, but I have no idea. So we'll find out next time. Sinestro number 5, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Dale Eaglesham. So last issue, they rescued a bunch of Corugarians, the Yellow Lantern Corps did, and then as they are flying off planet, turns out Sorenik contacted Hal Jordan. And so he's just standing there like, hey, buddy, let's have a little chat. So Sinestro is immediately like, all right, I just had a bunch of visions induced by that Church of No Emotion or whatever. A lot of them were Hal focused. Clearly this is just leftovers from that. So he charges towards the vision and he's like, this isn't going to do anything. And then he gets beaten back with a Green Lantern fist. And he's just like, no, I recognize that punch. That's definitely Hal Jordan. That's definitely Hal Jordan standing here. He's not a figment. He's just in my way. And Hal's like, yeah, I am. Also, looks like you're trying to do the whole savior of the people thing again. We all know how that ends. Stop doing it. And Sinestro's like, hey man, this is none of your concern. He's like, bro, I'm a Green Lantern, you're a Yellow Lantern. This is definitely of my concern. And Sinestro's like, all right, well maybe these guys can help you be less concerned. And he just sicks his Yellow Lanterns on them. They all start attacking. Sorenik comes up being like, dude, Sinestro, they're going to kill him. And just like, you think that if they were able to kill him so easily, I would have had any problem with it? Nah, clearly not. But even if he does, that's your fault for bringing him here, you stupid girl. What the heck were you thinking? You think you just jeopardize the race of your people, the future of your race, in order to kneel to Hal Jordan? You suck. And she's just like, I'm a Green Lantern, and he could have called everyone here, but instead he came alone, so maybe you should hear him out. And Sinestro's like, ugh, all right, fine, everybody back off. And there's like, what? He's a Green Lantern. He's everything we hate. And he's just like, this isn't surrendering, this is strategy. Back off. So he comes up and he's like, all right, Hal, look, you want to talk? We can talk, but first, my people need some medical attention, so how about we get somewhere where Sorenik can look over them more properly? So they go back to the Yellow Lantern planet where they're all setting up and whatnot, and Hal and him just have a full-on talk for like the rest of the issue, and I love it. And Hal's basically just like, all right, first things first, you may have forgotten, but Green Lanterns are space cops, and you got a bunch of lunatics and murderers, and we're not going to sit idly by without doing something. And Sinestro's like, sitting idly by, that's weird. That's kind of all you Green Lanterns did as the Guardians were doing all their crazy stuff. And Hal's like, bro, you were wearing green at that point too, and you only went yellow right before you murdered all of them. He's like, I didn't murder them. I punished them. Totally different. This is justice. That's what it was. He's like, nah, it's not justice. It's not for you to decide. And he's like, okay, who then? Who was going to judge them? Who was going to say that was going if I had to do it then, or we wouldn't have had another chance? And Hal's like, all right, what about Parallax? When we left, you were all weird, like super fanged, and you got the big shoulder pads. Like you were fully consumed by the Parallax entity. Was that not him taking control? Was that not it? And Sinestro's like, no. I was in control of that. And Hal's like, no, you've never been in control. That's your whole problem. You have always been driven by fear and rage. And Sinestro's like, me? Oh, me? I thought I'm rubber, you're glue, man. That's all you is. And Sinestro clarifies, I used Parallax. I struck at the Guardians, but like, who knows what they would have done next? And Hal's like, we could say the same thing about you, man. You do all this crazy stuff all the time. You took Parallax for revenge, and like, what, you just set it free? It's somewhere in the universe now? What the hell, man? That is entirely irresponsible. And Sinestro just starts laughing. He's just like, you are telling me that I'm irresponsible? Hal Jordan is telling, oh, Jesus, man, you suck. And Hal's just like, all right, look, bottom line, Sorenik called for backup. Clearly, she's at least concerned about whatever it is you're doing. So maybe you should have at least a little bit of worry yourself. And Sinestro's like, whatever my daughter does, that's on her. But like, for me, you don't have the right to judge my ability to protect my people. All right? And Hal's like, bro, they already fled from your rule once. That's the whole reason they were out there, was because you are like, yeah, okay, maybe you take care of them for a while, but eventually one of them's going to make a mistake or do something you don't want, and then you're going to go full fascist again, and you're going to rule over every aspect of their lives. And before Sinestro can respond, one of his other Yellow Lanterns come up being like, Sinestro saved them. He's a hero. Screw you, Hal. Let me kill him. And Hal's just like, I'm sorry. Who the hell's the freaking bodybuilder here? Dude, back off. We're talking here. And Sinestro's like, no. Look, Reigen, back off. We're having a talk here. Hal Jordan's only superpower is he can annoy anybody. So yeah, back off. And so Reigen goes back and joins the group and just like, all right, yeah, this sucks. But the other guy, I think it's like Zixden or something, is like, yeah, but it's like super interesting to watch. Like, both of them are just dodging around the point that they want to say of their loyalty to each other has been broken. They're like scorned lovers. I love it. So Soren comes up saying like, all right, all the Korrigarians are fine. And she looks up and sees Hal and Sinestro talking, just being like, oh, this is still happening. All right. So Sinestro points out like, look, you want to know what happened with Parallax? After Korrigar was destroyed and all that, yeah, I took on him. And then I went to this planet and like, I was being whispered to by Parallax to kill and murder and do all this horrible stuff. But like, I knew that eventually I would fall victim. So I did forever evil. Because I just had to, and then I came back to this planet and I started reading up on how to purge the entity from my system. And so I prayed and I meditated, and eventually, once I was done, I realized that I was empty, okay? I was empty, and I had nothing to do but await death, and that's when Lysidrax came up, told me of the Korrigarians who were in trouble, and now I have a newfound purpose. So not only did I save my people saved me from that emptiness. And Hal's like, okay, I get it, but at the same time, you have a history, man. And even if you changed, this is something that you need to be held accountable for. Because like I said, eventually, one of the Korrigarians is going to do something you don't like, and you're going to tighten your fist around his throat. You really think you can control that? And Sinestro's like, oh, you want to see control? I'll show you control. Go Parallax. And then all of a sudden, Parallax just comes out of Sinestro's chest and just starts attacking Hal, and everybody on the planet's like, I'm sorry, what? What's happening? And Sinestro, his internal monologue's just like, oh yeah, everyone here is surprised and horrified, but they aren't horrified at Parallax. They're horrified at the fact that I have managed to tame this beast, and the Sinestro they thought they knew has changed and is so much more capable than they ever could know. And so Hal's just getting a massive beating. He's being like torn apart by Parallax, and as it looks like he's about to do a finishing blow, Sinestro just snaps his fingers and says, all right, that's enough, come here, boy. And he goes back into Sinestro's body. He's like, I didn't send Parallax out into the universe. I subdued it. I control it. And it would have killed you right then if I didn't stop it. So I want you to understand that when it comes to control, I'm the freaking master of control, all right? So however much you wanted to come here and like arrest me or whatever, you got to feel like an idiot right now. And honestly, that's all I want. So he picks up the Korrigarians in a yellow bubble. He's like, all right, I'm going to take care of these things. You don't come after me, because all that's going to do is put my people at risk. And you wouldn't want that, would you? You wouldn't want to put any of the innocents in the crossfire. So peace out, Hal. And so he just flies away with the Korrigarians. So when it comes up to Hal and like tries to say something, and Hal's just like, just go. Just deal with that. Be the Green Lantern on the inside. And so they fly away, and Sinestro's like, and Hal will take that back home. And every time the Green Lanterns speak, it won't be, oh, Sinestro. It's going to be, oh, Sinestro. And they're going to speak with fear. I really, really like this issue. Here's the thing. I'm all about the talky philosophical issues. Like all those ones that just stop and just have a couple characters not punching each other constantly, but just like actually trying to get under each other's skin and like win through that method. And obviously Sinestro pulls a freaking trump card here. It just uses a demon, but I still love it. I think it was a fantastic issue overall. I'm going to give this one... Honestly, art-wise, it was really strong, too. It's hard for me to mention, but like it was really good throughout. So I'm going to give this one actually an 8.5. Super solid issue of this book. And honestly, if we just continue with this sort of stuff of like the philosophy of Sinestro and like showing his slow rides to power of like, maybe not like actual universe Hitler, but you know what I mean? Like something where he is able to regain that level of fear and control that he had, I'd be down for it. I'm super interested. So 8.5. Keep it going. Aquaman number 34, written by Geoff Parker, art by Carlos Rodriguez. So last issue, the Chimera followed Aquaman into Dr. Shin's hospital room, and he launched his attack. Picks up right there. Dr. Shin tells Aquaman to cover his face as Chimera spits fire, as far as I could tell, at him. Aquaman just tackles him out of, it's like a hospital boat. He tackles him out of the boat into the water down beneath. And I cannot stress enough, this issue is literally just one extended fight scene. Like, there's some talking in between, but mostly I'm just going to be describing, and then he hits him, and then he hits him. So, Chimera bites into Aquaman's arm. Aquaman throws a punch, and Chimera's like, oh, dude, I should have summoned animals to deal with you, but it doesn't matter. I am all aquatic life. And so he inks Aquaman, and Aquaman's like, this is the second time you've inked me, and it's still just as gross. So then he turns into like an eel form, and he's like, oh, ink was not used to like hide. I'm not hiding. I'm using strategy. And so he turns into an eel and zaps Aquaman. And then Aquaman turns into a lionfish, and I don't know what the lionfish's power is, but he's just like takes some pointy fingers and stabs them in Aquaman's chest, which apparently hurts him. So Aquaman then calls out for two hammerhead sharks to come help him out. And they attack Chimera briefly, but he's like, you freaking idiot. Did you forget I could control aquatic life? So he turns the sharks around to attack Aquaman. Aquaman's like, no, over there. Go get that one. Don't make me hurt you. Bad sharks, bad. And so they keep attacking Aquaman, and he's forced to punch him out. He's forced to not, and they like die. They fall down to the ocean floor. And Aquaman's like, oh God, what have I done? And Chimera's like, yeah, man, you're a killer of the deep. I'm not. You're the one who's killing the fish. That's on you, man. You're a bad guy. So Aquaman turns around, and he grabs hold of Chimera and starts pushing him up to the surface. And it's just like, all right, clearly water fight's not going to work here. Let's do this on land. So he pushes him up. They land on a bridge. They land on a car on the bridge. And he's just like, oh, you stupid idiot. Yeah, I've got defenses in the water, but I've got just as many up here on land. And so he wraps one of his like weird tentacle arms around Aquaman and tries choking him out. A few cops come up and start shooting, and just like, try not to hit Aquaman. And just like, well, he's kind of bulletproof anyway. Doesn't matter. Just shoot. And Chimera's like, you idiots, I'm also bulletproof. So he goes and attacks a cop. Meanwhile, Aquaman's still wrapped up in the tentacle, so he can't do anything about it. So Aquaman grabs hold of the tentacle and just whips Chimera around, throws him halfway across the city, crashes him into a petroleum truck, which then tips over and, of course, causes its own problem because it's petroleum. So we get some news segments that are saying, like, we're evacuating the financial district because Aquaman's getting in a crazy-ass fight with a thing called Chimera. I don't know. So we see Aquaman's punching him around. Eventually, he tells, like, some civilians to hide, and he loses Chimera, who activates some camouflage. He really just blends into a brick wall, and the moment Aquaman walks by, he's like, haha. See, here's the thing, Aquaman. You're also sea life, so I should be able to control you as well. I just wasn't close enough before. That was the problem, so now I'm plenty close enough. And he wraps Aquaman up and bites into his head, and then all of a sudden, everything goes golden colored. And we see that Chimera and Aquaman are doing a mind meld to a previous version of the Karakan and a Atlantean king. And they realize, like, oh, right, the reason why Aquaman cannot be controlled by the Chimera is because the Karakan, which he takes part of his mental thing from, was always subjugated by the Atlantean kings. So there's a connection there, but ultimately he's safe from Chimera's control. And Aquaman's like, well, then why aren't you answering to me, man? You should still be subjugated to me. And he's just like, oh, because, you know, I remember I had to serve your kind and I was destroyed for it. And like, that's why I don't want to be subjugated anymore. And he's like, oh, well, I can see your inside of your brain too, because we're doing a mind meld. You were Coombs. You were a man. Remember that I saved your life. There were a bunch of sharks attacking you. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, I can see even deeper into your mind. I can see you got a banging hot redheaded wife and a whole kingdom that you don't want anymore. So maybe I'll go there. Maybe I'll take out that place next. Maybe, you know, and they like start blending each other's words together, and ultimately they realize, like, oh, the reason that we're being rejected here is because we're not wholly of the sea or of the land. We have this split nature to ourselves, and the human half is always rejected. So they end up splitting apart again, and Chimera's like, all right, that may have been a mistake, but you made the bigger mistake of bringing me on land, because now I can just dry you out. And he picks up like a heat lamp and tries to attack Aquaman with it, and he's like, oh, but that was actually your mistake, Chimera. So he takes a top of a sewer, like, you know, manhole cover, and throws it at Chimera, knocks him out slightly, and manages to kick him into the petroleum truck as he's holding the heat lamp, which then, of course, explodes, killing Chimera. theoretically. So everything is getting cleaned up afterwards. Aquaman's cleaning up the wreckage, and seems like most people are fine. But then they find the skin of Chimera, and it's just like, geez, look at that. You blasted the bastard right out of his skin. And Aquaman's like, I don't like that. So at that point, we see some other first responders are at a park nearby, and there's a man there who is naked, and he's afraid, and he's just like, he must be a homeless man who got displaced. Are you all right? So let's take you to the hospital. And it turns out, because he's got glowing red eyes at the end, it's Chimera. He assumed a human form, and it's unclear whether or not he remembers who he is, but he ain't dead. So, yeah, it's okay. It's an alright issue. It's just an extended fight scene, though. Like, as much as they try to harp on this thing of, like, see, they're the same, but different. They both have a human half and an aqua half, but they are rejecting the human half part of them, and one's good, one's evil. Isn't it crazy how similar they are? And like, yes, that's very good theming. I'm very proud of you, Geoff Parker, but at the same time, this issue was just an extended fight scene, and this is the kind of stuff that should have been wrapped up in the entirety of the arc rather than just throwing it here at the end. I also think DC editorial might be partially to blame there, because obviously we're getting to the Future's End tie-ins, and they kind of wanted to have a fresh start after that, so I'm sure that's going to be part of a problem there. But yeah, beyond that, it's an okay issue. It's nothing to write home about. I'm going to say it's probably a... I'll give it a 6.5. It just, 7 sounds wrong to me, but it's close. It is close to a 7, but ultimately 6.5 for me. So, yeah, we'll see what comes after Future's End. The Flash number 34, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So last issue, Flash realized that the only person that the mashup killer could be is Detective Seaborn because of fingerprints or whatever. And this issue just picks up immediately afterwards. He's talking to Patty and is basically saying like, yeah, no, he's the only one who could be. He knew the weapons in our evidence thing. He was the only one who could break them out. And Patty's like, okay, but like, he investigated those crimes. He might have just left his fingerprints when he was doing that. And Flash is like, no. We all wear gloves. That's like forensic number 1. There's no way that's going to be a thing. So Patty's like, okay, you can go talk to Director Singh or Captain Fry, any of those. They will get you the stuff to build a case. And Barry's like, no time. He sent the last guy to attack Barry Allen. And now that Barry Allen is definitely still alive, no one around him is safe. I gotta go take care of him now. So he runs off as Flash, and apparently him and his partner are working some tiny little, like, smash and grab. This one guy wearing a bear costume got assaulted, and as they're taking info, Flash runs in, and the partner's just like, Flash, hey, this is a little bit under your pay grade. And he's like, actually, I'm here for your partner. He's the mashup killer. And immediately the partner's just like, how dare you throw these accusations around? That's ludicrous. But then Seaborn just holds a gun to his partner's head, just being like, all right, you figured it out. I don't know how, but if you make any quick moves, I'm gonna blow my partner's brains out. And Flash is like, you may be fast, but I'm faster. And he runs to grab the partner. But then it turns out that Seaborn had a teleporter on him that he also got out of lockup. He's like, yeah, this belonged to a dude named Skipper. Whatever, man, I'm out. So he manages to reach into his car and pull out I think it's a water gun, but like something that causes like a massive deluge of water, not just like a tiny little super soaker. And it starts flooding the block and theoretically might even drown his partner. But Flash grabs the partner, brings him to the dry land. And Flash is like, you would attack your own partner, Seaborn. You're nothing but a thug. And Seaborn's just like, hey, you made me threaten him. You're the one who did all this. And Flash is like, you were a good cop. How could you have gone so far? He's like, you weren't there, man. Forever Evil was messed up. The criminals won. And the only way that I was going to make it out of that alive was by turning sides and going to crime. That was the only option we had to live. How was I supposed to know that you and your freaking Justice League were all going to come back in the end? And yeah, I wanted to keep being a cop, but that meant that there were some loose ends I had to tie up of people who knew that I was a criminal. And those people that I investigated were my compatriots during that time. And Flash is like, yeah, well, that you still try to kill Barry Allen once he went snooping around. It's regardless of anything that happened in the past, you're still a criminal. And he fires off a glove with some rockets in it, and then they zoom past Barry because he dodges around them. But then they explode into a shrapnel bomb full of nails. And Barry's like, oh, I can just vibrate through this. But as he starts to vibrate his body, all of a sudden, the Speed Force, like, glitches. It hiccups. And he's embedded with a bunch of nails on his arm. He's like, what the hell? That was the Speed Force. That had nothing to do with Seaborn. So Seaborn's like, hey, man, regardless, I'm an ex-cop. I'm not going to Iron Heights. They don't treat ex-cops very well. And he's like, oh, you're worse than the criminals because they at least acknowledge that they were criminals. And he's like, how dare you? I'm not one of them. So he gets this weird, or Flash trips, actually. And then Seaborn manages to wrap him up with this purple rope thing going on. And Flash is like, hey, man, there's cameras on every street corner. Your own partner's still alive. Everyone has seen you. There's no way you're getting out of this. He's like, right. But if I'm going to Iron Heights, I'm going to Iron Heights not as an ex-cop, but the guy who killed the Flash. And so he's about to kill Barry when all of a sudden he takes a gunshot to the shoulder, giving Flash enough time to get free, just knock him out with a super punch, and then take any remaining weapons off of him. And it turns out it was his ex-partner, Parker, who shot him. And he's like, yeah, I was aiming for your shoulder. I'm a pretty good shot, actually. So Flash is like, okay, hey, thanks for the save. Are we good here? And he's like, actually, you're part of this crime. I would like to question you about this. He's like, no, bye. And Flash just runs off. So the rest of the cops show up. Parker says, like, yeah, he's the mashup killer. It's all him. I want this all taken up. By the way, that's Flash's blood over there on the ground after he got hit by with a bunch of nails. And Detective Singh is just like, we got Flash's blood. Oh my God, wrap that up. Patty, put it in a thing. We're going to get DNA evidence on the Flash. And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. And that's when Barry comes walking up and she's just like, oh, hey, man, we got your blood here. Are you cool? Is everything all right? And he's just like, yeah, look, something's going on with the Speed Force. I don't know what's up. What time is on your phone right now? And she's like, I don't know, it's like 11:30. And he's like, okay, that's not what my watch has. My watch is like falling further and further behind every time I access the Speed Force, and I don't know what's happening, but like it's messing up, and I got shrapnel in my arm because of it. And Patty's like, okay, well, hey, we'll figure it out, and don't worry, I'll fix the blood samples, it's whatever. And she's like, but you got to stop pushing me away. And Barry's like, I'm not pushing you away. And he's like, no. Look, you're making more time for Iris West's nephew and the mashup killer than me. We got to sort that out. And he's like, you're right. I'm sorry. We'll be better. I'll do better. So he does say there's one last thing he has to do before he does that, though. And that is he takes Wally and Iris to Iron Heights. And Wally's like, what are we even doing here? They won't let anybody see my Uncle Daniel. I've written his letters and they get like sent back to me unopened. They're not even trying to deliver it to him. Like he's not being able to talk to people. And Barry's like, well, when I make a call, they listen. And we see Uncle Daniel's brought out for Wally. And Wally's like, hey, dude, I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm going to prove that you didn't do all of this crazy ass reverse Flash stuff. And like, you were totally framed by the Flash. And Daniel's like, kid, I did it. I did all of it. And like, I hear that you're getting into like vandalism and petty theft and whatnot. Don't do that. Don't follow my footsteps. Be the first boy in the West family to make something of themselves. All right. The Flash is a hero. You shouldn't be against him. Everything's cool. All right. And Wally has this come to God moment, and he realizes like, oh, okay. And so he starts turning away. He walks out with Iris, and then Barry turns around being like, all right, I bribed you to say that, but I know you're still a piece of crap. And he's like, damn right I am. And if you don't keep that money coming to my account, I'm going to tell that kid what do I really think about the Flash. And one day I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to take him out, and I'll take you down too, Barry. Barry's like, yeah, okay, whatever, bye. So we see that the dirty cop is put into jail, and one of the guards is like, apparently an old friend of his, but he's like, yo, you're nothing now. You're just a dirty cop. And he puts him in a cell along with a bunch of the guys who were part of like the people he was framing and whatnot, like other people like that. So they all start beating him up. And then we get the time traveling backwards Flash. He goes 7 years from now, 6 years from now, and eventually he arrives 5 years from now. And he talks to his computer and he's just like, how long do I got to go? He's like, 5 years left. And he's like, okay, this is it, my last pit stop. And we see Reverse Flash running down the street. And he's like, I got one mistake. I got to save Wally. So we see Iris and Wally are driving. They realize Daniel West is out, so they're looking for him. And they're trying to get to him before, he does something bad. And then as Daniel's running through his Reverse Flash, he's like, Flash, I'm going to tear your city apart unless you come here. And that's where Blue Flash shows up. And he's like, hey, I'm right here, man. He's like, you're not Flash. He's like, yeah, I am. I'm from the future. And I'm here to show you what happens. What happens when all this time is lost. What happens after the end of all this. And I am the end of you and the end of me. And that leads into the Future's End issue, which honestly, this is the only issue I think in any of the series I've read that actually blends into the Future's End 5 years later issue coming up next. Because this is obviously what it's going to be about, and that's absolute insanity that a book actually decided to blend that issue into the storyline rather than just being like, we're telling that story and then we'll get back. It's all right. I mean, the mashup killer stuff is really just a big fight scene between Flash and Seaborn. That's not that much to talk about. The Speed Force hiccuping, they've been setting it up. They've been doing all this stuff. It seems like it's just going to be the next arc in general. I'm cool with that. And then having this bit where Wally's got the turn to God moment, being like, yeah, no, my Uncle Daniel's not a role model and he was guilty. And that's something that's going to force him to reevaluate some stuff. And I'm sure when he does get his Speed Force powers, because of course he does, we'll see how that turns out for him. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7, just a flat 7. It's all right. It's not an awful book. I think that the first half of it's kind of the weaker part, and the second half's where I got more interest out of it, but it averages out to a 7. All-Star Western number 34, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Darwyn Cooke. Definitely got the big name for the final issue here. So we open up in Wyoming. Last issue we had a whole thing of Jonah and Tallulah just saying, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing anything. Maybe we can live peacefully. So Jonah wakes up at a campsite and he roams through the prairie side, and as he's walking along, he sees a bunch of discarded clothes of Tallulah's until he makes his way to a big natural spring, and we see her jumping off a cliffside, skinny dipping in it. And as she's minding her time, just doing whatever, all of a sudden Jonah comes up, surprises her from behind, and they share a kiss. So they make some food in the morning, and Tallulah asks if he's sure, and it turns out that Jonah's like, yeah, we got to go into town. There's a guy who stole my identity, which was 4 issues ago that was brought up. And she's like, I don't get what you get out of this, of someone and what does he get out of it? Of someone taking over your identity. What is there to gain for any of this? And he's just like, I don't know. Regardless, we got to head in and take care of that. I can't have someone sullying my name that way. And Tallulah is like, oh, I just want to see his face when he sees you. So they start driving their way into town, and they come across a wagon with a broken wheel, and then just oh, excuse me, my name is L.B. Farnham. I've got a curiosity shop and whatnot, and if you're heading into town, could you get a blacksmith to come out here and fix my wagon wheel, because it's broken. And Jonah's just like, take your horse and ride into town yourself. What's stopping you? Jesus. So they drive off, and Farnham's talking to his other guy he's got there, just be like, I don't get a good feeling about them, especially since they're running into a town that's controlled by the Jonah Hex gang. So they get in. It's already sundown. They decide to stop in at a hotel. As the guy behind the desk, what name should we put you down for? Jonah looks over at a guy carrying George branded flour in a wheelbarrow, and he's like, George Barrow. That's my name. So they get up to a room, and Tallulah gets undressed, and he's just like, I don't know, should we just go down, get a drink? And she's like, oh no, first we're going to take advantage of an actual bed. So eventually they go down to the bar, they get a drink, and Jonah looks over and sees the guy who's taken his name, and he fake Jonah Hex. It's just like, what you staring at, stranger? He's like, you are an ugly SOB. And he's just like, oh, okay, you're asking for trouble now. So he says, do you know who I am? And he's like, no, go ahead, tell me, what's up? But then all of a sudden they're interrupted by this little goofy dude in glasses whose name is Wheeler. And he's like, oh, a couple of men came to town. They said they want to see you dead. So fake Jonah's like, you stay here, Mr. whoever you are, and I'm going to go out there and take care of this. And he's just like, yeah, okay. So Jonah tells Tallulah to go after the geeky guy with glasses and see what he knows while he hangs out at the bar. They meet up in the bedroom later on, and Tallulah explains Hex has got 14 different associates. The sheriff and deputies are in his pocket, and he's the only one who's any sort of good with a gun, but like there are just enough of them to be difficult to take down at any point. And apparently he also has a temper. He gets angry easily, and the guy with the glasses is apparently writing a book all about Jonah Hex's life, and that's, a whole thing. So Tallulah is like, okay, how do you want to handle this? Because like, we can just leave. Like, we don't have to deal with it. We can just have a happy ending. Just let him be Jonah Hex and then take off. And he's like, nah, man, I've been to the future. I know that we don't get a happy ending like that. And he's like, well, we can change it. So at that point, they go to bed, and Jonah's like, are you sure, should we run from a fight? And she's like, who said anything about running? I just don't think that it's worth running into certain death. So they turn out the lights. Somewhere in the middle of the night, Jonah gets up, he puts on his old outfit, and he looks at Tallulah and leaves the room before packing dynamite into his waistband. So he runs over to the hotel where Jonah is, fake Jonah, and pulls some dynamite out, lights it on his cigar, and tosses it in. Immediately, the sheriff and the deputy are like, what the hell is that? And they go get their guns. But Tallulah's at the door, already waiting for him, just saying like, well, that's none of your concern. We're just going to let that play out. So as the men start piling out of the hotel because it's freaking on fire, Jonah just shoots them one by one as they come out, and he's able to take pretty much all of them out. He gets grazed in the shoulder, but otherwise no big deal. So he goes upstairs into the burning building. Inside is fake Jonah, who's got a woman at gunpoint, and he's like, oh, you take one more move, I'm going to shoot this girl. And Jonah just shoots the fake in the foot and just says like, oh, you're a coward and you're pathetic. So he shoots the gun out of his hand, and then he picks up fake Jonah, throws him out the window, and as fake Jonah lands down on the ground below, he looks up and sees the real Jonah Hex just standing in front of this burning building, big old knife in his hand, just face cast in shadow. He's like, Jesus, who the hell are you? What do you want from me? And he's like, my name's Jonah Hex, and I want to see you die. And he stabs him with the giant knife and walks away. So at that point, Tallulah's like, oh, you're so predictable. Yeah, no, I took care of the sheriff and all them. We're good to go whenever. They're just locked in the cell. And the dude with glasses comes up being like, sir, you're going to go down in history as the man who killed Jonah Hex. Please, what is your name? And he's like, my name? George Barrow. See ya. And him and Tallulah take off out of town. Immediately, the townspeople all come after fake Jonah and just like, oh, I got his ring. I got his cigar holder. I got all this stuff. And Mr. Farnham comes into town, and he's like, that man's quite the spectacle. I want him. And so his co-worker or whatever just fires a gun in the air and says like, that body's property of L.B. Farnham now. Anyone who's got anything other to say, let me hear it. So they take the body, and the dude with glasses is like, what are you going to do with him? And he's like, oh, taxidermy, my boy, taxidermy. People are going to come far and wide to see this guy. So Jonah and Tallulah take some horses, get out of town, and Tallulah's like, all right, well, you've unwritten yourself from history. What do you want to do next? And he's like, I don't know. Kind of want a boat. I want to go down to Louisiana, get a boat, maybe be a pirate. And she's like, you want to be a pirate? And he's like, yeah. I mean, you'd be a fine pirate. You already got the eye patch. And she's like, oh, ha, ha, ha. So he basically is just like, all right, well, I got some money stashed around. Yeah, I'll go down, buy a boat, and see where it takes me. And she's like, all by yourself? And he's like, I mean, I don't really want to be, I'm not sure there's anyone I want to be trapped on a boat with for a while, but yeah, we'll see. And he basically turns to her and says, you want to come with me? And she's like, yeah, of course. So we see they bought the boat. They left their hats on the dock, and it was called the Louisiana Purchase. And yeah, the end. They sail off into the sunset. It's a nice book. I mean, this book has always surprised me in that it's never been A-grade material, but it never really felt like low-quality trash either. It's just been a solid B book the entire time. And sometimes it did surprise me with how interesting it got. It had some interesting things to say, but ultimately it did just remain a solid B book the entire time. And this last issue, I'm surprised they brought back the fake Jonah. I thought for sure that was just tossed aside entirely, but now they decided to wrap up that plot point, and they got Darwyn Cooke to do the art, and it's a perfectly fine last issue. It gives a good emotional beat to it. So yeah, I'm going to say this is a 7.5 for me. I think it's just shy of that 8, but it's still very, very good. So, excuse me, anyone who's got an interest in All-Star Western, definitely worth checking out. Secret Origins number 5, written by a bunch of people that I will get to as we cover each story. So this one is Cyborg, Red Hood, and Mara. So we start with the Cyborg story written by Marv Wolfman, art by Edgar Salazar, and we already kind of got the Cyborg story in the first Justice League issues, so it's a little bit different than that, but we open up in Star Labs where Cyborg is arguing with his dad about, like, oh, you're using this equation wrong. And he's like, no, I'm not. Shut up. I'm a scientist. And he's like, yeah, and I'm a computer, and you're using this equation wrong. And all the other scientists are talking like, man, they always bicker like this. And one of the scientists is like, yeah, don't think of it as bickering. Like, they still, this is them just expressing their ideas with each other. And Cyborg overhears this, and he's like, yeah, like, it's all friendly now, but back then it wasn't. We see him as a football star, and he's on top of the world. Everyone's giving him praise and whatnot, except for his father, who's basically saying, like, sports are for idiots, and you're not an idiot. You're super smart. You stop being in sports. But he enjoys hanging out, with all of his friends and whatnot, state champs and all that. And his father points out, like, look, modern science can already make all of the things that make you special in sports. And who knows, the next step might make you like Superman or something like that. And we see he's got all these scholarships, but they need parental to sign it, so it's not going to work out. But he comes to his dad and basically just like, why don't you respect my decisions? And he's like, why don't you respect the life that me and your mother tried to build for you? And he's like, because that's the life that you want for me, not the life I want for me. You got to let me be me. And they just keep on arguing back and forth, like the exact same points. And essentially his father's point is, we worked hard in order to give you this life, to like hand it to you on a silver platter, and you have gifts that should be shown intellectually. Those things are the things that are going to last you the rest of your life. This sports stuff, it's only going to last you, a few years? And then who cares? Like, you'll just be thrown out like that. And basically, Victor's just like, nah, man, you just don't get it. So he even makes a point of saying, like, look, I'll do the sports thing and then become a scientist. And he's like, no, you can't do both. It's not allowed. So eventually he does turn 18. He moves in with some friends and he signs whatever scholarships or whatever. But then his dad keeps on trying to get him to visit him at his lab because he's cut off contact entirely. But eventually he wears him down, and Victor decides, all right, fine, I'll go there, see if anything between us can change. And as he gets there, that's when the dark side invasion happens. He's looking at a picture of his mother, and then all of a sudden the boom tube opens up, it fries half of Victor, and then everyone in Star Labs is like, oh, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here. And his father's like, no, I already lost my wife, I'm not gonna lose my son, let's take him to the Red Room and we'll get some tech on him. So they go ahead, bring him in. It's all the stuff we already seen before. And he basically says, like, oh, I'll never leave him. And Cyborg's like, and he never did. Even when I was like at my lowest after that point, when I wanted to give up, he never did. And we see like the training montage of how Cyborg like started controlling his cybernetic limbs, and he started doing like track and field assessments and stuff of like truly showing off his potential. And then we see all the superheroics he does, taking on Darkseid and a few other things that frankly we've never seen in comics because nobody's focused on Cyborg. Until we cut back to modern day, and they're still discussing these equations, and Silas Stone is like, all right, I guess you're right. And Cyborg's like, everybody, my dad said I'm right, let's mark this down. And he's like, you're right for this specific part, but you're not taking it far enough. Let me show you where you're going wrong there, son. And they just have some more playful banter as the image of Cyborg's mom is still on a photograph on his desk. So they have a good little family dynamic there. Overall, fine part. I would say it's a 7, but it could be so much more if we just cared about Cyborg at all as a character. Next up is the Red Hood part, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Herbert. We open up with young Jason Todd running away from some cops through a suburb, and they're just like, oh, stop, kid, we will open fire. And he's just like, yeah, sure you will. So he loses the cops, and he's smiling the whole time, and he's happy that he's able to outrun them. And then as the cops get back into their car, they find that the steering wheel's been stolen, and he's just like, how the hell did that kid even manage it? So then one night, we get Jason Todd stealing some drugs from Leslie Tompkins' clinic when all of a sudden he bumps into Batman, and he's just like, oh my god, it's so terrifying. The Batman, I've heard legends of him, but like, I've never actually seen him. However, Batman doesn't take him to jail. He takes him to Wayne Manor when he finds out that Jason is homeless. So we see that a week passes, and he's just talking to Alfred, just being like, hey, yeah, how's it going? What's going on? And he stops into Bruce Wayne's office and just like, hey, Bruce, I'm going to get going. I don't think I really belong here anymore. And Bruce is like, let me show you something, Jason. And he takes him down to the Batcave and shows him all the Bat stuff. And he's wearing his cowl now. And he's like, so, what do you say? I got an opening as for Robin. You want in? And Alfred's like, yeah, you should say yes. And he's like, absolutely yes. So the training sessions begin. Bruce shows him sparring and stuff like that. He also teaches him science, and the narration says, like, I never took very well to science. And then he throws out, like, this massively complicated formula. And then eventually he became Robin. But then, months pass. He starts getting more and more brutal. He starts brutalizing the thugs a bit more. And then one day, Bruce takes him out to the Wayne plot in the cemetery and says, like, look, I don't want you to be another me. Like, I don't care if you are trying to make up for the life that your parents, like, lost because your dad was a drug dealer and your mom was an addict. Like, I don't care if you're doing any of that. I just want you to realize that you have an opportunity to be something better here. That's what I'm trying to give you. And Jason's like, oh, this was never about fixing me, Bruce. This is about fixing you. Don't waste your time when you on someone else when you've got your own problems to deal with. So 2 weeks later, he hears that his mom might actually be alive in some foreign country. Turns out it's just the Joker who got Robin out here, beats him nearly to death with a crowbar, and then blows him up. Then something happens, and all of a sudden, Jason Todd wakes up in a coffin. He digs his way out to the surface, and as he stumbles away, he suddenly gets woozy and passes out, and he is greeted by Talia al Ghul, who then picks him up, flies him halfway across the world, and dunks him in a Lazarus pit. And as he gets back out, he's like, oh, Lazarus pit. That makes you Talia, yeah? And she's like, yep, that's me. We're going to do some cool things together. And she, like, hesitates for a moment because she's, like, actually afraid of Jason and what he's become and whatnot after the Lazarus pit. So he needs more training to be an assassin. He gets dropped off with Dukra and the All Cast and, all this other stuff of assassin training or whatnot until eventually some time passes and Jason's like, thank you, Dukra. You have shown me how much I've changed and that I can grow into the role of the Chosen One. But I don't believe in that, so I'm just going to leave by. And so he just bails out. And then we see, he comes back to Gotham. He wants to make an entrance. He can't just show up on Bruce's doorstep and say, hey, I'm alive and now I'm an assassin. So there's a exhibit, I guess, of all the different criminals of Gotham's, like, costumes. And so he comes up to the Red Hood one and he's like, this is what I will do. I will become the Red Hood. I will take the Joker's identity before he was the Joker and I will become that. And so he becomes Red Hood, and we end on a page of him fighting against Bruce, saying, like, oh, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm an outlaw named Red Hood. It's fine. Like, I described it very passive-aggressively, but that's only because it's freaking Scott Lobdell writing Red Hood for, like, the 200th time, and I'm so sick of it. I don't know. 6. Sure. Whatever. Art style's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Lastly, we have Mara's, which is written by Jeff Parker, art by Daniel HDR, and we see her training with the Zebellians of attacking Atlantean warriors. They're actually just suits of armor that the King of Zebel is moving around, and she manages to take it out pretty strongly, and the king, who is her father, is just like, very well done, my daughter, you're ready to take on the final tasks and whatnot. And Nereus, I believe his name is, comes up and just being like, well, it was fake armor. A real Atlantean would be harder. I should be going in. I'm the leader of the army and whatnot. I should go in. And then the king just, like, says, no, she's got better water control powers, and she'll go into Atlantis weaponless, get their trust, and then all of a sudden kill their king, which at this point is Orm. And just like, yep, it's going to be great. So he basically pushes back saying, like, no, she's supposed to be my wife because that's tradition that the king of the military and the princess get married. And Mara's just like, I'm sorry, are you talking about me? Like, I'm not even here. Like, screw you, man. And, like, make some water things. And he's just like, Mara, look, I get it. I understand you're strong and whatnot. But, like, the whole reason I raised through the ranks like I did was to marry you. I want to be with you. And she's just like, all right, whatever. So all of a sudden, there's news of some shipwrecks, like a storm or something that's going to be sending some shipwrecks down to Zebel. And so the king sends off Mara to go take care of it and salvage it. And apparently that's just a thing, like only shipwrecks can enter Zebel through like the Bermuda Triangle or whatever. So she goes off and she starts stripping off the stuff, and she's like, oh yes, I can turn this into a new wing of our school so that we can teach all the children how Atlanteans are evil and how they banished us from their realm and they all suck. So the next day comes and they're in like a giant sea anemone patch to use the energy of the anemone to pass through the barrier. I don't know. Regardless, the king is like, all right, I'm going to do this real quick. By the way, Mara, here's a little shell thing that has a message from your mom. Only listen to it when you get out of Zebel, okay? That was her wish. So he uses whatever water magic he's got to open up the barrier, and Mara goes through, and she manages to get to the other side. And the king, like, stutters for a second. He's like, oh, Jesus, Nereus, I nearly died there. And if I died, you would become king. Wouldn't that be crazy? So she comes up. She surfaces for the first time. She sees the sun. She takes it in. And she's looking for Atlantis. She feels like it should be easy, but she can't find it at all. So finally she stops and asks for directions. It's some fishermen who are like, aren't you an Atlantean? And she's like, no. That is absolutely incorrect. How dare you think that? And he's like, well, the only Atlantean we know is Aquaman, and he's super cool. And she's like, what? What do you mean super? Atlanteans suck. What do you mean super cool? And she's like, well, he saved a bunch of like kids the other day. And just you see this paper of him saving like down flights or whatever. So she gets redirected over to Aquaman. This is during his early days still, where he's got like the sideburns and the necklace thing going on. And he's currently freeing a bunch of killer whales who have some sort of fungal infection that's messing with their sense of direction. And he runs into Mara and he's just like, whoa, hey, you're like bending the water. That's super cool. And she's like, hey, you're controlling the fish. And you're like, you're not a total prick. And he's just like, thanks, I guess. Yeah, no, what's going on? Where are you from? Are you an Atlantean? Just like, no, I'm from another realm, a different place. And he's like, oh, sweet. Anyway, let me take care of these whales real quick, and then we could talk. So he gets the whales out to safety. One of them's still having trouble, so Mara literally lifts it out of the water and sets it down where it needs to go. And he's just like, you want to go get some food? Come on, let's go get some food. So they go to a nearby fish joint, and he's like, all right, they prepare it very weird here, but like, I think you're going to like it. And he points to the shell around her neck, just being like, oh, hey, is that a Zebelian thing? And she's like, oh my God, I forgot to check my messages. Hold on, I gotta go. So she runs off. I love this joke. As she runs off, a dude turns around, looks at Aquaman and says, hey, Aquaman, don't worry. There's plenty of, and then he cuts him off, just being like, don't you even say it, man. So she goes and she has to dunk the shell in the water in order to get what the message is. And it's from her mom basically saying like, don't worry about the mission. Don't worry about all the traditions and stuff like that. Marry who you want to marry. Be who you want to be. Like, live your life for your own. That's, be you, okay? You just be you. And she's, getting all teary-eyed over this, and Aquaman comes up being like, sorry, I didn't know you were taking a call. What's this mission thing? Is that something important? Is it something you need to do? And she's like, yeah, but I think it's going to take me a really long time. So I like that. I think it's very heartfelt. I'm going to give that one a 7.5. So overall, decent issue overall. Red Hood in the middle kind of brings it down a little bit, but that's just my own personal biases because anybody else needs to be writing Red Hood. But beyond that, solid otherwise. Star-Spangled War Stories featuring G.I. Zombie #2, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Scott Hampton. My God, that is a mouthful. So last issue, we introduced the character of G.I. Zombie, a.k.a. Jared, his new partner, Carmen, who is a real person, stumbling across some weird southern militia thing that has, like, rocket missiles. So, yeah, it's a lot. Carmen has managed to infiltrate as a just horrible woman named Tiffany. So we have Carmen walking up. She's got an earpiece in. She's talking to Jared, just being like, all right, you're approaching the boundary of their place. You got to hide the earpiece. And she's like, yeah. So she comes up. She's like, hey, I'm Tiffany. Duke's expecting me. And the guy gives her a pat down. It's like, all right, well, you got a knife here. that's not allowed, but I'll hold on to it and you can go in and when you leave, you can pick it back up for me. And we see Jared, the GI zombie, is watching from binoculars far away, just being like, all right, she got in, that's great, but like, you know, apparently she's got her own history, and this is kind of just where she got shunted after her tours in the military. She came back with some PTSD, and hopefully this is going to be doing something better for her than that. But as he's standing there reminiscing, two of Duke's people, who is the bad guy, I don't know if I mentioned that, come up, and they've got him surrounded. Jared's like, well, you know, I'm great at what I do. So he throws a knife behind him, immediately impales a guy in the neck, and then the other guy gets tackled down to the ground saying, you know, make one sound and you're dead. So he gags the guy and says, all right, I know you need to check in at regular intervals. How soon's your nearest one? And he pulls out the gag, and he's just like, I ain't telling you nothing. And so he puts the gag back in and says, you know, I'm a zombie. I know, crazy, right? But because of that, I've been in a lot of wars. And because I've been in a lot of wars, I've been taken prisoner a bunch of times. And because I'm a zombie, I have survived a lot of torture. And therefore, I know how to properly torture people. Have you ever been flayed before? Because I know how to flay you, and it always starts with the face. So I can do that, but I think the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm a zombie, as an appetizer, is I'm just going to eat your fingers. I like eating people's fingers first so they can watch. So I'll ask you one more time. When do you need to check in? And he's just like, an hour. I'm checking in at 7. You got to believe me. And he's just like, oh, I believe you. I believe you 100%. By the way, I need to take your phone real quick. Thank you. So we go inside the facility. We meet with Duke, who is meeting with some scientists that are basically passing off a super virus to him. And they're like, look, don't let anything come in contact with it. Keep it refrigerated. And whatever you want to use it for, that's on you. And he's like, oh, yeah, we got some big plans for this. And just like, whatever, we don't care. We already got the money, so everything's good to go. So they pass off the drugs, and they exit the facility. We see one of their names is Valerie, and the other, I have no idea. But regardless, Marcos, that's it. So they get in the car, they start driving off. As they drive off, G.I. Zombie takes a picture of them leaving and forwards it to, I guess, the CIA. And the CIA guy, his main contact is called Gravedigger. I don't know. But he's like, oh, we got this image. It's clearly from G.I. Zombie. Facial Rec says that one of the girl, Valerie, she was one of our agents who just resigned mysteriously. And when we deemed her a non-threat, we stopped following her anymore. Clearly, that was a mistake. But we also don't know who the other guy is. So let's get Facial Rec on that stuff. But they figure out, all right, we got to figure out what's going on down there and see if we need to intervene. So Duke meets up with quote-unquote Tiffany, Carmen, and just like, hey, you made it. Great. Awesome. Let's take a walk. And they walk through this weed-filled field. And she's just like, oh, man, this is like a stoner's paradise. And he's like, oh, look, this doesn't even matter. Like, it's about to be legalized. This is back in, 2013 or whatever. This is about to be legalized, so it's barely going to be anything. And that's because the government just wants to regulate it. And she's like, oh, the government. How I hate them so. And Duke's like, yeah, anyway, are you looking for some work? And she's like, not farming. I was hoping something more hands-on. And he's just like, well, look, I just need to get to know you a bit better. How do you really feel about the federal government? So Jared makes his way to another little outpost. There's a guy just reading a nudie mag, and he shoots the guy a few times and then puts sunglasses on him to disguise the fact that he's dead. Then we get back to Duke's conversation, and it is literally just a manifesto at this point, where Duke's like, big government wants to regulate everything, but it's not the government. It's actually the oligarchy. All these big businesses are taking over every aspect of your life. And like, there's nothing we can do. We're just led about like zombies. And these rich politicians, they drift away from the common man. Jails are a business and all this stuff. And she's just like, right on, brother. Power to the people. Totally get it. What are we doing here? Is this like, are we doing a political rally? What are we doing? And he's just like, whoa, okay, hold on. You don't gotta like charm me anymore. I literally just need to know whether or not you're on the up. And I want to know that you are committed to this cause in the same way I am. And she's like, oh, totally. Government sucks. Screw them. We're big business. Thumbs down. Not a fan. And he's like, all right, love it. And then all of a sudden, the alarm starts going off. Obviously, someone found something of GI zombies. And he's like, well, all right, that was good while it lasted. So he makes his way into what appears to be this rundown shack. As he gets inside, he's like, all right, well, there's got to be more to it than this. And he sees a couple of white lab coats leaving the building. So he's like, all right, well, that must be where I need to go next. So he follows in. He meets a couple of armed guards inside. One of them he tackles to the ground and bites out his jugular. The other one he just shoots in the head. And he's just like, all right, clearly this is the lab area now. So let me take a look around. He sees some coded info on a laptop that he forwards over to his boss. And as he comes to a refrigerator, it's totally empty. And he's like, well, I feel like there was something in here recently, but then all of a sudden a few grenades come jumping in through the down the stairs, and as they all explode, guys upstairs are like, all right, well, that should do the trick. He's probably dead now. So they come down. The whole room is just in rubble, completely destroyed, and he's like, yeah, well, his body was eviscerated. He's definitely gone. And then out from the fridge pops G.I. Zombie, says boo, as he shoots the guys, one animal for one. So Duke comes up. He's like, hey, what's going on? Where are we going with this? And they're just like, oh, we're under attack. We don't know by who. What's going on? Duke sees the lady with the super virus in the briefcase, just being like, is that the stuff? Great. Take Tiffany here. Get to our other location. And Tiffany's like, well, hold on. I want to stay here. I could throw some punches, whoever's infiltrating this. And he's just like, no. Just trust me on this. No, that's not how we're doing this. You're going to go with her. Bye. So they run off to a different location. Meanwhile, they uncover the giant missile truck they've got, and then like, all right, let's get it loaded up. We got to do this now. So all the guys are shooting up at the shack where G.I. Zombie's held up. He's got a few guns on his side, but ultimately he runs out of ammo, and he sees them loading up an RPG, and he's just like, all right, well, that's not good. And as they are about to fire off the RPG, in comes a government helicopter who blows up the people who had the RPG. Gravedigger and a bunch of other people come in, and G.I. Zombie's like, oh, hey, man, you really wait until the last minute. That's great. And he's like, yeah, it's great. Where's your partner? And he's just, I don't know. It's a big place. I'm sure she's wherever the missile is at. We should probably find that missile. So they start making their way over to that. They see the government chopper flying overhead like the bad guys do. And just like, oh, it's a military chopper. What are they going to do? And Duke's just like, military chopper ain't going to risk blowing up a giant missile. So we're going to fire it off anyway. So he starts typing in coordinates. The helicopter pulls back to get a better shot, and we see G.I. Zombie and Gravedigger blowing out the tires on the missile truck. But ultimately, it's not enough. The missile starts its launch sequence. G.I. Zombie jumps onto the missile and just starts punching at it as it's in mid-air flight. So it flies overhead. Carmen's talking to the other female scientist with the briefcase, and scientist is like, oh, that's it. That's the end. That's the end of everything. So Gravedigger wants to know where it's going so we can shoot it out of the sky. And Duke's like, wherever it is, shoot it, whatever. You're never going to stop what's inside of it. So G.I. Zombie breaks open the panel finally, gets the coordinates for where it's going to land. Of course, it's Washington, D.C. And he's like, well, got to stop that. And he starts ripping out wires, but nothing's causing it to explode. And he's just like, all right, well, I've got to change its course then. So he blows off one of the fins on the back, causes it to get a little bit, not in a straight line anymore, and it starts flowing out of the sky down into a tiny Tennessee town called Sutterville. And I think it probably had the virus on it. I don't know. It says next issue, can G.I. Zombie stop a zombie apocalypse? So I'm just going to go ahead and guess that one. I'm still getting my bearings on this book because it's weird in the way that it bounces, like that manifesto in the middle, it puts a lot of stuff that's hard to disagree with, of like, big business running everything. But then it couches it in the idea of this is a dude who's going to blow up Washington. So it's like, what is the book trying to say there? I'm a bit confused with that, but it's got some good humor otherwise. And I do like the art style most of the time. There's a few panels where it looks a little bit weird for me, but in general, it's a fine art style for it. So overall, I think I got to give this one I guess a 7. I don't know. It's such a weird book. It's such a strange one to come out of this era here. So yeah, I don't know. I'll give it a 7, but I'm still trying to figure out what the hell this is. Justice League Dark number 34, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Andre Guinaldo. So last issue, Deadman was used as a portal to bring this ancient Cthulhu deity named Pantheon to Nanda Parbat, and then things went bad, and now Deadman is alive man. So we open up with Pantheon staring over Nanda Parbat. He causes ruins and everything falls apart. And Deadman's just like, I have no idea what's going on, but that dude's a bad dude and he's doing bad things. And we see Pantheon says the word rise and like some other magic spell words, and all of a sudden he makes the tower that Sauron is on in Lord of the Rings, just without the giant eye. It's literally exactly that. So Deadman's like, okay. And I'm a little bit trapped right now because I'm alive and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm somewhere in Nanda Parbat. I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm all alone because all of my friends are definitely at home as well. And then we cut to Zatanna, Constantine, Nightmare Nurse, and Swamp Thing, who are all chained down to the ground outside of this desolate field that Pantheon made. And they've got some sort of magical chains on them. And apparently Constantine's been trying, like, release spells constantly. And he's like, man, why did they chain us down anyway? Why didn't they just kill us? And Nightmare Nurse says, oh, well, I put a protection spell on us, a healing spell, at least on us three. I don't know if it affected Swamp Thing the same way since he's an elemental. He might actually be dead. And Swamp Thing hasn't said anything for like hours. And so Constantine just keeps on trying different spells. And he's just like, oh, when I managed to get out of here, then I'm going to just bail out. I'm not going to care about you guys. I'm leaving you here. And it looks like it's working. But then all of a sudden he snaps back down onto the ground. And he's still chained totally tight. So we cut over to Deadman, who's still trying to figure out what's going on, when all of a sudden door opens up and in steps Brahma Das, who, as we learned last issue, is apparently like a spiritual guide or something for him. But he's like, wait a minute, hold on. The last Brahma Das I saw was actually just Pantheon in disguise. So who the hell are you? He's like, I'm Brahma Das. And he's like, all right, I'm willing to believe you only because I'm trapped here and you just freed me from my chains. So guess I'll follow you. And as he starts making his way down there, Deadman's like, Jesus, hold on, man. I haven't actually had to use my lungs in like many years. Can you just slow down a little bit? And Brahma Das laughs at that. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you actually are Brahma Das, because that's the kind of thing he would laugh at as well. So they make their way out, and he's basically like, yeah, look, sorry I'm being brash about this, but we got to go because Pantheon, we're only able to hide if we just keep on moving. And they make their way to a room filled with water. And Deadman's like, I was never much of a swimmer. I'm not sure I can do this. And he's like, well, would you rather die here by Pantheon? And then all of a sudden, this giant-ass whale creature with fangs comes out of the water. And he's just like, what the hell is that? And he's like, oh, it's a thought that Pantheon had. He's essentially a god here, but I can counter it with my own thought magic stuff. So Brahma Das makes a giant counter water whale to fight the other one, and then they go fugitive and jump over the edge of a waterfall down into a lake below. So Deadman looks like he's going to drown. Brahma Das brings him back up to the water. He's like, thanks, man. I was not used to having to not breathe and like breathe as well. Like all that was just a problem. So he gets up and they're in some sort of magical garden in Nanda Parbat. And basically he's like, okay, let's slow down. Why am I alive again? Why did Pantheon bring me back? And he says, like, Pantheon didn't bring you back. Nanda Parbat did. It recognized you. It remembered you. And he's like, okay, first off, you're saying that Nanda Parbat's alive? And it's like, yes, she is. And it's like, okay, whatever. Second off, you're saying that it welcomed me and recognized me. I was here for like 5 minutes in my origin story. And then it gives a little editor's box that says, that's coming in Secret Origins in the future. Don't worry about it. But he's just like, no. You know this place. You know it deeper than you think. And then all of a sudden, Deadman gets the biggest retcon of his freaking life. And it turns out that he was a very abused child. His parents would disappear for days and then come back and just like beat him. And he was always praying for a way to get away. And then Brahma Das showed up in the spirit form and took him and all the other spirits of all the other hurt and abused children away to Nanda Parbat in order to have a secret world of joy and fun. And he's like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. I thought it was just my imaginary world. When I grew up, that's all I thought it was. And Brahma Das is like, oh, your mind forgets, but your heart remembers. And Nanda Parbat never forgets. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of magic arrows come flying in off the side. And he was like, what the hell is that? And it's like, oh, magic arrows. They hurt your body and your soul. Do not get shot by them. So they start trying to make their way out, but then they are intercut by some dudes on fanged horses. Yeah, so we cut back over to the Justice League Dark, and Constantine has not stopped complaining the entire time. And he starts to, and the worst part is, and then Swamp Thing finally interjects, like, the worst part is you haven't shut up for the last 2 hours. And he's like, oh, Jesus, Holland, we thought you were dead. And he's just like, nah, man, I've been deep in the green trying to connect to it in this alternate dimension. And I think I finally figured it out. And Constantine's like, what's that good that going to do with us? And he'd be like, oh, watch and learn. So he pulls in the green. He gets into like a vine cocoon. And then all of a sudden he emerges as this giant worm caterpillar creature with wings. It's horrific but amazing. And he uses the green to undo the shackles on each of the Justice League Dark and allows them to fly over to the giant dark tower in the middle of the field. So they start making their way. And they ask, like, hey, does the green know what happened here? And Swamp Thing's like, yes, it knows everything that's happened here. And I can give you the full rundown. So he does. And he says, long ago, there were a bunch of old gods who lived very short lives and were very violent and greedy and awful. And then an enlightenment happened and some new gods rose up and they were wise and compassionate and they cast down all the old gods down into the ocean. And over time, they were forgotten and they coalesced together and they became Pantheon. Pantheon is just 100,000 old gods all combined together in a cosmic coma. So once Nanda Parbat was destroyed by Project Thaumaton, it finally had its ability to come back again. But in order to get to this other dimension where Nanda Parbat is hiding out in, it needed Deadman or someone that Nanda Parbat trusted in order to get through. And they're all just like, Deadman has a link to Nanda Parbat? Does anybody know about that? And they're like, no idea. So we go back to Deadman. They're surrounded by the guys on horses, and Brahmadas is like, I'm out of magic, bro. I can't do anything. And Deadman's like, but I'm only human. And he's like, wait a minute, what do you mean I'm only human? I'm a freaking acrobat. So he starts jumping in, doing kicks, kicking guys off horses. He manages to steal one, grabs Brahmadas, and starts to pull him up on the horse, but then jumps off himself and says, Brahma, you get out of here. I'm going to keep these guys busy. And he's like, but you'll die. And he's like, yeah, well, this was never going to be the status quo. So he gets shot a whole bunch of times. And of course, his ghost comes back out as Deadman, and he's just like, all right, I'm Deadman, and I'm going to kick your undead asses. And then all of a sudden, all the guys on horses are knocked off by a massive wind gust, and we see that it's Zatanna using a spell, and Constantine's just like, great job, although I was the one who taught you a spell. And they come down, and Deadman's like, what are you guys doing here? They're like, we're coming looking for you. You ready to go? And Constantine starts making a portal to get out of there, and he's like, no, guys, we got to beat Pantheon. Pantheon's like ruining Nanda Parbat, and Constantine's like, screw that, I don't wanna. And he keeps making the portal, and then all of a sudden the portal goes kaput, and Pantheon's there. And he's just like, yeah, no, I control this place. I'm not gonna let you keep me from achieving my goal. So he starts stomping on a few of the Justice League Dark. They all dodge out of the way. Brahmadas's spirit shows up and is like, guys, it literally feeds off of violence and hatred. You cannot fight it in a superhero punchy way. You got to do this differently. So they all hop onto a magic carpet spell that Zatanna made, and Brahmadas is like, look, you have to unravel the very idea of its existence. It's just thought forms. That's all it is. Thought forms of a larger god. So you got to do it from the inside out. And he's immediately, Deadman's like, you want me to possess Pantheon? He's like, right, you can do it. But just to make sure you can do it, I'm going to give you some extra help. And so the spirit of Brahmadas goes into Deadman. They get blasted out of the sky, and Deadman takes the opportunity to go inside of Pantheon. And immediately he's terrified because it's like 10,000 gods in there, but Brahmadas calms him down, and he starts expanding out, flowing throughout the body, and turns out that the idea is to be a beacon of hope and graciousness in the world, of beauty and joy, and use that to turn all of these evil gods into good things. And therefore Pantheon just kind of falls apart and it goes back into its base forms. The Dark Tower collapses and reforms itself as the Nanda Parbat that everybody knows and loves. And yeah, it's happy ending. Everything's good. So some time passes and Deadman's talking to Brahmadas, and Brahma's like, oh, without you, we may have fallen into total darkness. Like, that's, you're welcome to stay here for as long as you want. And he's like, oh, I absolutely want to, but like, I got some stuff I still got to do in the real world. And, you know, maybe one day I'll settle down here. But Brahma, can you just tell me, like, why me? What makes me so special? Am I like the reincarnation of a Nanda Parbat prince or something? And Brahmadas is like, Seriously? You? Nah, man, you were just a scared kid. I brought all the scared kids here. But you are one of the rare ones who remembers who they are, or something like that. He just says who remembers. And Zatanna interrupts and is just like, hey, Boston, we're going to get going. You ready to go? And he's just like, yeah, let me say bye to Brahmadas. But Brahmadas has already disappeared. He's already in the wind. So they all fly away, and Dead Man says, oh, tucked away in the corner of my heart, that old man will always be there. And so will Nanda Parbat. The end. I like it. I think it's a decent story. It definitely feels like it could have been an extra issue or two. I think that I would have liked a little bit more expansion on what makes Pantheon such a threat here, because ultimately it just feels like he wants to rule this city in an alternate dimension that nobody's actually going to be in. And they say that, like, oh no, that's a horrible thing, but is it? Like, I'm sure there are dark elder gods in all these alternate dimensions, but like, do we care? They're in alternate dimensions. So I would have liked a little bit more on that, but ultimately it did with what it could. I'm fine with it. I'm going to say this is a 7. Just feels too high, but I think I still got to do 7 because 6.5 feels too low. I'll give it a 7. It's a solid enough issue. I wouldn't put it in great territory, but it is definitely worth checking out if you've got any interest in Dead Man at the very least. Batman Eternal number 21, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Layman, and Seeley, art by Jason Fabok. That's it. That was the name. Yeah, so this issue picks up in Cathedral Square, where apparently Vicky Vale lives, and the news is on saying, all right, this is it. We're getting the verdict for the Gordon case. We're going to see he's walking out now, and we're going to get all this. We have Jason Bard showing up at the door. Him and Vicky share a kiss. Apparently, they've worked out this whole thing of she's going to get an exclusive because Jason is being named as the new commissioner. Despite whether or not Gordon's going to get off or not, he's actually becoming the new commissioner. So he's like, look, it's fine. I didn't get it in for fame and glory. Let me see what the story says. So they watch the TV, and it says, all right, Jim Gordon, for 123 counts of manslaughter, has been found guilty, and he will serve a life sentence at Blackgate. And Bard's just like, look, we already knew this was coming, but like, there's been a new development. We're going to see how we can handle this. So we then cut into Blackgate, where Rex, who we discovered was an old crime boss before Falcone, is watching Falcone get ready. He's being extradited to Hong Kong, and so he's able to get out of there. And basically, Carmine's just saying, like, yeah, all right, I had my fun in this city, and then I got bored, and you coming back was a surprise, but ultimately, whatever. And he's just like, look, I thought that I killed you by my own hand, and like, I have an entire criminal empire over in East Asia that I'm just going to walk back into and claim as my own. Like, I don't lose anything. I didn't lose to Batman. I didn't lose to Catwoman. Like, nothing stopped me here, all right? And one day I'm going to be back because that's just what I do. And Rex is like, is that a threat? And he's like, yes, absolutely. Bye. So he steps out. Zerbatos, the warden, is basically saying, like, all right, look, Bard's going to be here, the new commissioner, to drive you to the airport. But before that, I got a little drop in from somebody who wants to have a word with you before you leave. And she hooks a carabiner into Falcone's belt loop, and then immediately pulled up into the air. And Batman's there being like, you lied to me, punches Falcone in the face. And he pulls out the knife that was in Dr. Falsario's chest over in the Batgirl plot. And he's like, this knife is a ceremonial knife. It was passed between crime lords in Hong Kong. Clearly, this would have been left to you. And you said you didn't have anything to do with Gordon's death. Falsario was directly behind it. Clearly, you have something to do with it. And Falcone just starts laughing. He's got blood dripping down his face, or up his face, depending on how you look at it. He's like, man, you have no idea what's going on. You have nothing. And Batman's like, all right, tell me who. Tell me what's up. And Falcone reaches into his pocket and pulls out a tiny little card. And he's like, I just got this invitation. It said what I needed to hear, and I know what I could accomplish with it. And the invitation says, you have been cordially invited to partake in the devastation of Gotham City. Jim Gordon falls in precisely 2 weeks' time. The rest is up to you. And he's like, Also, that knife, yeah, belonged to me, but I have no idea where. Like, I lost it one day. I was wondering where it went to. But you know what this means, right? It's only just beginning. So we covered the GCPD. Gordon's office has been cleared out. Bard's brought his stuff in, and Bullock's waiting in the door. And he's like, you look good behind the desk. And Bard's like, hey, look, man, I know that I've got big shoes to fill and whatnot. Shouldn't you be out partying with everyone else? Or, sorry, not partying, condoning. Having their little loss and shared upsetness over Gordon's verdict. And he's like, yeah, no, it's like a wake over there. I don't want to be there. And he says, like, look, I know what kind of guy you are, Bard. I care about this city. I don't know why, but I want to see it do good things. And Gordon was on the right track to make that happen. And I see that same sort of thing in you. But you got big shoes to fill with Gordon is just a lie, because you shouldn't be trying to fill his shoes. You should be making your own damn shoes. All right? So Bullock's like, all right, well, I'll leave you by yourself. I'm going to leave. So he steps out, and Batman's already in the office. He's like, you're right. Or he's right. Gordon's got big shoes, and you shouldn't be trying to fill them. And Bard's just like, is that a congratulations? Is that what I'm going to get out of you? And Batman's like, I don't trust you, but here. And he hands over a flash drive saying, this is evidence that's going to get Gordon off the hook. He was very explicitly mind controlled. We have absolute proof of that. Take this, get Gordon out. And he's like, and who's behind all of it? Do you know? And Batman just doesn't make a move. And he's like, you don't know who's behind it yet? And he's like, no, but I'm working on it. And this isn't over. And we need Gordon out of jail in order to like make this happen. And he's just like, yeah, totally. I'll go right now. I'll head out. So Batman does the disappearing thing. And Bard's like, oh, right. Yeah, that's a thing that happens. So we cut to Julia and Alfred, who are in the, I don't know, library of Wayne Manor. And Julia's like, Dad, you wanted me here for so long, but like you're not talking to me. You don't like come to see me. What's up? I thought you wanted to get to know each other. And he's like, Julia, I want to tell you why I stayed on as a butler for the Waynes, why I didn't come back, but it's not something that I can easily say. And then all of a sudden the alarm starts going off, full alert. Julia's like, what the hell's going on? She pulls out a gun because she doesn't know what's up. Alfred speaks into his cufflinks saying like, oh, lock down the premises. And the computer just says, cannot comply. And Alfred looks over like, you've got a gun? And she's like, yeah, your house is creepy. And he's like, all right, whatever. So he opens up a bust of William Shakespeare, presses a button inside. It opens up a safe room. And Julia steps in just like, oh, a safe room. And he's like, yep. And he does like a nerve pinch to take her out, grabs her gun, and then closes the safe room door with her inside. So he's got the gun. He starts walking through the manor. He's like, I don't know who you are in here, but I will have you know that I will shoot you directly beneath your C7 vertebra. I have turned down multiple sniper positions in order to star in King Lear, so I am a better marksman than a fool. And he ends up firing a shot, misses whatever he was looking for, and then standing behind him is a dark figure who says, Alfred, you are always the best, but I'm not here for Bruce. I'm here for you. And as Alfred turns around, he gets the gun taken away from him. He gets knocked down to the ground. The vial of fear toxin, pure fear toxin. And he's like, oh, hey, Alfred, this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. And you already know that. But you know what? You just hush now. And we see that it is Hush who injects the vial of fear toxin directly into Alfred's brain and says, let me show you what true fear is. So Julia comes to in a moment, but we'll get back to her. We go back over to Blackgate where Falcone has been let down and he's waiting on Bard. And Bard comes up, talks to Zarbatos, and she's like, oh, hey, yeah, you guys right here. He had a little talk with your friend earlier. And Bard's like, yeah, well, he can wait. I've got some release papers here. You need to let him out now. And she's like, what? Him? Are you serious? I'm going to be making an official complaint. This is insane. And he's just like, yeah, do whatever you want, but right now you're going to do what you're told. I want to go see him now. And we see Gordon waiting in his cell, and Bard and Zarbatos make their way down, and they pass right by Gordon's cell. They don't stop to see him. And Zarbatos explains, this man is barely over what this suit did to him. His lawyers worked for months to get him out of Arkham. What the hell are you thinking get him out of here? And she says, yeah, well, go back to your office. I want to talk to him for a minute. And when she's gone, Bard turns and says, I believe my associates have been in touch. We're ready to get the next phase of our plan into action. And we see that it's some man I'm unfamiliar with named Zachary Gate. He's got a full outfit that Bard has brought in via duffel bag and says, I'm getting you out of here. We're ready to start the next plan, but we need an architect to do that. So apparently his name is Architect. Julia runs in, manages to rewire the safe room stuff in order to get out. Her father's just screaming in terror on the ground. She tries calling an ambulance, and Alfred comes too long enough to say, hey, you got to listen to me. Grandfather clock, 10:48. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's just like, So, final page, we have Hush calling up Bard. And he is like, yep, everything's in place. The architect's setting the stage for what's to come. Batman doesn't suspect a thing. He has no idea what's going on. And Gotham belongs to us now. And you see him pull out the flash drive Batman gave him and crush it in his fingers. End trade. I should have figured this would have been a big one. Not only that I finished the trade, but also Favic's on the issue. Like, of course they're going to give him the biggest moments, being... like hands down the best artist on the book. No, it's a solid issue. It definitely feels like that turning point. I think I said last issue that I felt like all the different plots were wrapping up, so it could set the stage for whatever comes up next. But this is absolutely everything all at once is combined together. They have Hush here. They got Bard turning face, or turning heel, I should say. All this stuff going well, and then we're just setting the stage of what's going to come next in the next trade. So I'm down for it. This issue is at least an 8.5. I do think I'm going to stick with that, though. Just because it is only the first turn. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more twists coming up and a lot more big reveals. So I'm looking forward to that. But ultimately, definitely a good read if you are up for reading like 30 issues at a time. Future's End number 17, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Patrick Zurcher. So this issue picks up in the Horn of Africa, where John Constantine and his crew have come across a village where everything is dead. Everything has been murdered and killed, including the fleas on the dogs' backs. No life left whatsoever. So we have Constantine, he's basically lighting up a smoke, and he's just like, yeah, okay. Look, you consider yourself a history buff. You know all those ancient cultures that just, died? They just died off over time or suddenly and all that? They didn't die. They were killed. There is a thing out there that has been around since the beginning of all things, and it is back, and it has killed this village, and it is looking for the thing that we're looking for. And we hear a rumbling noise off in the distance. And immediately they're like, okay, well, we got to follow the rumbling noise because, like I said, it's looking for what we're looking for. And that's hopefully if we just move faster, we can get to it before it does. So we then see Hawkgirl is being brought to a laboratory on Cadmus Island. A few guards are leading her in, followed by an OMAC. And she's just trying to be snippy and all that sort of stuff until she gets into the lab and she meets with a Dr. Sook, who... he's like, oh, hey, Kendra Saunders, Hawkgirl, can you confirm your identity? And she's like, seriously? The giant wings? They don't give you that away? And he's like, it's a formality. Just go with it. And he's like, well, do you know why you're here? And she's like, well, I didn't until I saw you. It's because of the implant in my head. And he's just like, oh, yeah, the data flow. Something's wrong with it. We just got to check on it. And she's like, BS. I know for a fact that the implant is growing and you don't know why. And the whole reason that I'm here is because you want to take it out and me and you have a history. And we get a flashback panel of Hawkgirl as she's being processed, just punching him in the mouth. So he's like, well, this is going to be very uncomfortable for you, so that's good news, right? And then all of a sudden, an OMAC just reaches out, grabs Dr. Sook by the head, and crushes it. So then we cut over to the jail cells where all the Earth 2 people are being held, and Deathstroke and 50 Sue and Lana are having Cole, Grifter, just look at the cells, seeing if anything stands out, anything's going on here. We see that Cole's like, look, I'm not seeing anything. Most of them are Earth 2 people. That's about all I'm getting from it. But if we're looking for whoever's messing with Cadmus' systems, it's not going to be someone in here. It's going to be someone out there. And frankly, I don't think I believe in the fact that my whole superpower is seeing deception. So that's stupid regardless. And Lana's like, well, maybe it should be. Maybe you should consider that to be your power, because if it's not, and you're not useful for this, I'm pretty sure you're going to wind up in a cell of your own. And as she's saying this, all of a sudden, all of the people in the cells just get out. It's unclear whether or not the walls go down or if they just step through them, but regardless, they all just walk out of their cells, their eyes go white. Same thing goes for Cole. He punches out Deathstroke, and Deathstroke's like, oh, it's not even my birthday. And then all of the people in the cell start attacking, and 50 Sue's like, oh, this is freaking sweet. So she teleports out the group onto the roof. She knocks out Grifter in the process, and Deathstroke's like, hey, kid, this isn't a game. You need to focus up. And she's like, what are you talking about? This is survival horror now. This is freaking awesome. As we see all of the Earth 2 people escaping the Cadmus building and just killing random scientists and guards. So we cut to Vancouver, where Barda and Emiko have made their way across the country. And they're meeting up with a car, and Barda's a little bit concerned, but Emiko's like, no, this is a friend. And out steps John Diggle, who is like, damn, all right, she is big. And it's like, yeah, that's why they call her Big Barda. And Barda's like, what is this? What is going on? Someone just tell me what's happening here. And Emiko explains, yeah, this is Diggle. He's an old-time friend. I figured that we could do this a certain way, but like now the Deathstroke's after us, we had to change up a little bit. We used some Queen family money, shuffled that around to buy this big freighter ship, and what we're going to do is hop on this and take it to an island, a very special island. And Barda's like, I don't care about a frickin' island. I care about Mr. Miracle and the Earth 2 people. What about that? And she's like, Barda, all of that's connected. The person who killed Green Arrow, which is Oliver Queen, who is my stepbrother, he is the same person. The same people who captured your 2 people killed Green Arrow. So we're going to go out there. We're going to find this special island, which will lead to the Earth 2 people, and we're going to get revenge for Green Arrow. So then we go back to the Superman plot. Superman was fighting against not Ravage. The hell is her name? Rampage. That's it. Rampage. And Lois is about to be attacked. Some cops are firing off some tiny guns, and Lois is like, wait a minute, there's a grenade launcher here. It worked to blow away Superman. It's got to work on her. So she blasts Rampage. It does nothing but pisses her off more. And so Superman comes back in, and he's like, oh, geez, you know what? You might have won this battle, but I'm going to win the war. And she picks up Rampage and starts doing like body blows and stuff like that, and ends up blasting her like clear across the sky. It's a whole thunderstorm going on at the same time. But then Lois's internal monologue is commenting on the mask of Superman, because now the lower part of it's been smashed. We can see the mouth. And she's just like, okay, it doesn't seem to be like a more alien appearance or like a disfigurement or whatever, so I don't know what this is, but regardless, he's as strong and as fast as ever, so he's still definitely Superman. And we see Superman catches up with Rampage and is just like, you think I like hitting you? I wanted to make you better. Please stop making me hit you. And so Rampage just bats him against a wall and starts like really laying into him, starts shattering his mask even more. And ultimately, it doesn't look good for him, because Lois comes in and she's like, oh, this is going to be the end. This is like the end of the big fight. Superman's definitely going to win this, and I want to see it coming. And so she turns the corner, and Superman's being crushed in Rampage's arms. And he's like, Lois, you got to get out of here. And she's like, no, I'm not leaving you, Superman. You're killing him. You got to let him go. And Rampage ends up batting her away. And Superman goes, finally, Shazam. And then boom, thunderbolt of lightning strikes Superman and Rampage, takes her out. Lois comes to, and she's like, what just happened? And we see Superman, now not in his Superman costume, rolled over on the ground. Lois goes, shakes him, like, Superman. And he's like, not Superman. I'm Billy. You gotta help me. So, final pages, we get John and his little merry group, Constantine, out in the desert. There's nothing there. They followed this into the middle of nowhere. They're all exhausted. When all of a sudden, a giant burst of water comes up from the ground, and then another one closer, and then another one right underneath them, blasting them up and away. And as Constantine lands with the geyser of water coming down, we see out from the water steps Kal-El of Krypton, the real Superman, shirtless and with a beard, and Constantine's like, oh, Kal-El, I presume. End trade. Damn, man. They really structured this week to be a bunch of surprises. I appreciate this. I think it's a solid point. We get to the ending of a bunch of different plots while still keeping a few mysteries alive. I think the Emiko one was one that was getting the least amount of attention. I think it's only gotten like 2 appearances over the past like 10 issues. Finally, we're getting some details on that, of how she's going out to do things. The Superman plot's finally quote-unquote resolved. We know that it's now Shazam was taking the place of Superman for some reason, and Superman himself is out in the middle of Africa for some reason. All of these mysteries that have resolved, just ask more questions, and I think that's a good way of structuring this mystery. This feels like a lot got done this issue. The only one I'm going to critique is the all these people in the Earth 2 cell block or whatever that suddenly went white-eyed and started attacking. That didn't feel like an answer. That just felt like a mystery on top of things. That just felt like a shake-up. So, a little criticism there, but honestly, the Superman plot was more than enough to make up for it. If you had just that in this issue, I'd be down for it. But everything else added on top of it, it's great. I'm looking forward to seeing what other twists and turns we're going to get moving forward. And I think this one is pretty solidly it's a 7. 7.5 even. I'll give it a 7.5. Good work. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this August 27th, 2014. And I will go ahead and roll right into the comics list after I give one more little we did it anniversary sort of spiel, but more so focusing on you, the viewer. Thank you. You're super cool. I like your hair. You dress nice. All these things may or may not be true, but also I do mean it from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot to me. Every time I see the view ticker go up, even by 1, it just means that, yeah, somebody at least has a passing interest in the New 52 in some regard, enough to check it out. Maybe once they see the dude sitting alone at a desk with a whole thing going on here, they think, well, not quite for me, but hey, that's fine. That's fine. I'm glad they at least gave it a chance, because that's the big thing about the New 52 is, does it have its problems? Yes, absolutely. I am not debating that. I am 3 years into this. I know about its problems. But it does still have its little diamonds in the rough. It does still have some good things that managed to peek through, and I think a lot of people overlooked that. I think there are some things that people never really gave a fair shake because it just has New 52 attached to it. So for anyone who is currently listening to this, I know you're not one of them. You're not biased. You're not against things just because it's got a name that sounds weird. Like Quentin. That's a weird name. I'm sorry. It's very late as I'm recording this. I have procrastinated like crazy. So, once again, thank you so much. I will go ahead and roll right into this ending comic bit here. Next week, in no particular order, well, a little bit of particular order, we have some normal comics coming out. Justice League number 33, if you can believe it. I think that's a 2-month delay on that. No. Yeah, no, this was 34. All the other books were number 34. Jesus Christ, Geoff Johns, get on that. Additionally, we have Batman Eternal and Future's End because the weeklies do not pause for event months. And what do I mean by that? Well, Jesus Christ, it's an event month. We're getting Future's End stories. We're getting books set 5 years in the future. And I got a big old heavy, thick omnibus that I'm going to pull out at the beginning of next week. And I'm just going to be reading from that for 4 weeks in a row. So, in no particular order with those books, we have Detective Comics, Batwing, Grayson, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Phantom Stranger, and Swamp Thing. Those are all the Future's End tie-ins for that week, and there will be many more as we progress onwards. So, yeah, be sure to check that out. But for anybody who has been a part of this show for a while, you know that I change things up as the years progress. I give a passage of time showing visually on screen. Audio listeners, I'm so sorry. This section means nothing to you, but try to imagine. Use your brain. So for the past year, I have been wearing a Flash t-shirt. Prior to that, I was wearing a, why am I blanking? Green Lantern t-shirt. And then the first season of the show had a Batman t-shirt. Well, we're at the anniversary. I got to cycle through again. So changing my shirt to the new guard. Oh, we got Wonder Woman, kind of blocked by the microphone, but yes, this year is the year of Wonder Woman, mainly because I literally could not find an Aquaman t-shirt. Seriously, I wanted a black Aquaman t-shirt with the logo, just basic, nothing fancy or text on it, does not exist. That's crazy to me. But Wonder Woman, plenty of that. So we're going to be going with that for this year. But yeah, I think that basically wraps it all up. There will be a few other little visual changes as the episodes progress next time. See if you can find them all. It's like a fun little picture game, except there's no reward, and I might only notice if you say something. But speaking of saying something, if you have any comments on the show or any comics that I covered this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below or on one of many of the social media platforms that we've got. We've got a Discord, we've got a subreddit, we've got a Patreon. I check almost all of those. I won't tell you which one I don't. And yeah, that pretty much does it for me. Once again, thank you so very much for 3 years. I am so stoked to be doing this for literally just a year and a half more. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But regardless, I hope to go through it with you. And yeah, always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.